started.
Call the meeting to order for February 14th, and happy Valentine's to everybody here. And thank you for making the board meeting a priority in your life today. We have 6 members. We have 6 board members present, and we will begin with our pledge of allegiance to both flags. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We don't have anybody signed up for public forum. As far as I can see, we don't have anyone signed up for public forum. So we're going to begin with our superintendent's report.
Madam President, members of the board, good evening. I'll keep it short and sweet. Ms. Hart, Ms. Lewis, Ms. Hart, it's official, Ms. Hart has an announcement. We wanted to introduce you to our new assistant principal out at Miller Middle School.
Good afternoon, Madam President, board members, Dr. Cardona. Just wanted to say thank you so much for your recent addition to the Miller family. We have Mr. Henry Griffith. He goes by Russ. He's our newest assistant principal. We thank you so much. You want to introduce yourself, sir?
Hi, I'm Henry Griffith. I'm excited to be here. I want to thank the HR department, Ms. Hart, for all the hard work they put in to get me here. I can't thank y'all enough, and I'm just super excited to be a part of the San Marcos community and to serve Miller Middle School as.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Enjoy the roller coaster ride.
Put on your seatbelt.
That's right. It's Valentine's Day, so I won't say anything about what took you so long to get here about my old district, but that's okay. I know. I worked there for 11 years. Madam President, members of the board, I do have one announcement, and it pertains to item 6D, information on incentive for staff. I want to thank Trustee Halsey and all the board members who encouraged this to happen. I also want to thank our team. When I say team, the executive cabinet, those in finance, HR, chief academics. January was a tough month for our staff members across the board, custodial, maintenance, transportation, our teaching staff, our administrators, our counselors, everybody kind of just pitched in. We were fortunate in that we did not have to shut down, and I think that's in large part due to their professionalism. And so we wanted to do something. I think y'all encouraged us to try and find something else to do. They already know that you are supporting them with 2 of the $500, but through the work of the finance department and HR, we were able to find another additional $500. So tonight I'm here to announce that not using our general fund, this is coming from ESSER funding. We were able to issue $500 to all staff members at the end of March. And then as a reminder, April, we have the $100 to show proof of your 3rd vaccination, which is totally voluntary. And then in May, we have the last of the $500 pay. We can't give them back time, but this is something I think that all our employees worked really hard in January. It was a tough month. So thank y'all for encouraging us to look at unique ways to support them.
Thank you.
I don't have much else other than to wish our wrestlers, we have 3 young ladies who are going to state and will be at the Berry Center in Houston representing San Marcos at the state meet. We have our girls basketball team who will be playing Cedar Ridge tomorrow in Dripping Springs at 7 o'clock. Our boys last Friday beat Lake Travis in a tough game, and they finish up with Westlake, but they will make the playoffs as well. So we're 4 for 4 in this season. We have our spring sports, soccer, boys and girls soccer. We have track getting ready to start, tennis getting ready. So come on out and enjoy. Baseball and softball is going on right now, so you can be outdoors and enjoy the fun. But absent that, I will say that if you don't have an agenda item, you are more than welcome to go home Per the board president, you don't have to stay here if you don't have an agenda item. Enjoy your Valentine's Day, please. We're going to be here for y'all in spirit.
You don't have to tell them twice.
See, they follow directions. They follow those directions. Oh man, that sun is
The
right.
sun is so crazy.
Mr. Duval, is there anything like you can block the door with? Like,
It's very bright.
I thought that was your head for a minute, but it's the sun. You can't hear that.
And you have something to talk about here.
They're like a. That's like.
That's not
Hey. Got nothing? Good try, though. Madam President, that's all we have for Superintendent's report at this time. We'll turn it over to Mr. Terrence Sanders, our Chief Academic Officer, to discuss 6A.
Okay. Good evening, Board President Cantu, Board Trustees, and Superintendent Cardona. This evening, the Office of Academics will present the annual district report. I am joined by Mr. Mitchell, our Executive Director of School Leadership, Ms. Pearson, our Director of Student Services and Community Engagement, and Dr. Villanueva, our Director of MTSS. The data shared in the annual district report is based on the 2020-2021 academic performance. The link to this data, which you see here on the screen, will be published within 10 days of the presentation, so by February 28th, it will be live on the website. So the 2020-2021 annual report will include 8 sections to be reviewed this evening. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions about many of the things that we'll be presenting, so I respectfully ask that if you could just hold them to the end, we'll be, of course, more than obliged to answer those questions for you. So I'll start off by just talking a little bit about Section 1, the Texas Academic Performance Report, or some call it the TAPR. It's a report that is compiled by TEA for every district and every campus. It's based on PEIMS information and student assessment data. It focuses on a wide range of things, including student subgroups, demographics of our students, and our teachers. So you'll see all of that as we go through the report. There's a title page that looks very similar to the one on the screen, the box that you have there, which states 2020-2021 Texas Academic Performance Report. And there are 4 required components to the title page: the accountability rating, the special education determination status, the ASVAB test, and then the distinction designations. So just to give you a little background here, the accountability rating, and my team will get into this as we move on. We were not rated due to the state of Texas being declared for a disaster with the COVID pandemic that we're still under. If a district complied with ASVAB, there will not be a rating. So if you look at the cover sheet, you'll notice that we do not have anything for ASVAB, and that's because we complied with the rating. The special education determination status, you'll see needs assistance, which I know that can be alarming when you see that. We will talk about that later as to why we have that rating, but just for a little background on that, there are currently 4 areas for SPED in terms of the labels. They are meet requirements, needs assistance, needs intervention, and needs substantial intervention. So we will be able to provide to you exactly where we fell and why we have received this rating that we currently have. So I'm now going to turn over to Mr. Mitchell. He will continue Section 1 of the taper.
Thank you. Good evening. So the taper looks a little different this year. They gave it a facelift and have added some color to make it easier to read. Overall and in general, the taper includes 13 subgroups, and we'll talk about those as we go through. So you'll see reports that include bits and pieces from each of those subgroups. And then the 2 big pieces to kind of keep in mind as you're looking at the taper is that 2 years of data, not just consecutive data, are used. So sometimes you'll see 18 to 19, When you see a report that'll have 18 to 19 data on it, that means they can do comparative growth. But if you see something that says 19 to 21, because in the year 2020 it was suspended, there won't be an opportunity for growth. So normally when you see a taper, it will always have that growth aspect of it, but this one's gonna have some gaps because of that. And so, again, progressive growth will show anytime there are consecutive years, and when there are not consecutive years, it's just overall performance. So the slide about that you see here, the star performance compares the 19 and 21 years. Since those are not consecutive, it's just going to give the overall performance. And that's 2019 was the last year of that performance was recorded prior to COVID, and 2021 is the first year following that year we had of remote learning. So you'll notice there's a little bit of a dip in some of the scores that's following that year that we had an entire year of remote learning, which is, and compared to the state and compared to other areas in our service area, that's pretty typical. Okay. Should have brought my reading glasses up here. So the next slide is our academic growth. It is from 2018 to 2019. Again, this was the last time that growth could be compared through consecutive years. So you've probably seen this slide many times, but it needed to be included again in this report. So if you have any questions about it, you've probably had those answered the last couple of years, but we'll be happy to see if we can answer those for you again. Oh, thank you. The next slide is basically the same thing that we saw. It's 1819 to 2021, but this is specific to our English language learners. This year, the state has changed the term, this year the state changed the term to emerging bilingual. So when you see English language learners or our Ls before, we're now going to refer to those as emerging bilinguals. This is progress data for those groups of students over the consecutive years as shown. This information is also going to be included as we go through several indicators when it breaks it down by subgroup and special populations. So you'll see the district star participation. District star participation. You'll see that the district is on the far left, and on the far right is the state. We were at 99. In 2019, we're at 99% participation. And even during a pandemic, we were able to be at 91%. That's something the district should be very proud of. Our principals did a really great job of making sure students showed up to take those tests so that we had information that was much more valid than a lot of people in our area and in the state. So definitely a shining star, and kudos to those principals for doing that.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Cardona, Superintendent. My name is Rose Pearson, and I'm the Director of Student Support Services and Family Engagement. This next section, you will be able to see in the taper report that you have the attendance, the graduation rates, and the dropout rates, as well as the graduation profile. So what we have here is our 5-year graduation rate, and you can see that in 2018, 2019, I should have brought glasses too, my goodness. Thank you. No.
Approach to eyeglasses.
Oh my goodness, I can't see the percentage there, and we don't have it in front of here. Oh, 94%. Oh, this is not correct on the graduation rate. Sorry. We should have it should be 90.6 and 91.3. I'm not sure why it's not right here. It's right on my copy. But in 2018, 2019, it was 90.6. In 2019, 2020, it was 91.3 on the graduation rate. And then on a dropout rate, you do have a 2% in the 2018-19, and then 3.2 in the 2019-2020 school year. And again, the dropout rate is an area that we really focus on as a district, so we have a lot of supports and resources in place in order to work towards that. We want to take a holistic approach with the whole district from a pre-K-12, but obviously in the high school is where we want to get them across the finish line, so we have a lot of supports with home visits with our MTSS group here at the high school. We monitor attendance patterns. We also have a mover-leavers sheet that we visit bi-weekly, actually, with administration, and we look at that. We make sure that we are offering counseling supports and that additional supports are given so that we can get the students graduated. Some of the challenges that we do see are some unaccompanied youth, and so we monitor that as well through our McKinney-Vento.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes, ma'am.
In our book, what you announced for graduation and dropout are switched.
The dropout is the 2% and the 3.2%?
Yeah,
On the comparison?
19-20 is 2% in our book, and for the 18-19, it's 3.2. And the same with the 5-year graduation rate. What you said was backwards from what we have in our book.
Do you have the 90.6 and the 91.3 for the graduation rate?
91.3 is 18-19.
For graduation, yes.
and
18-19,
And 90.6 graduation rate is
90.6.
19-20.
You're right, it's 91.3 and 90.6.
But-
Yes. 2018-19 is a 91.3,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
19-20 is a 90.6.
Same thing on dropout rate. What you said was, so the book, our board book's correct, or?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry about that.
No. I just, our dropout rate has reduced, so that's good.
Yes. And then the
Different
attendance
colors.
rate, this percentage is calculated based on the student attendance from the highest 4 6-week attendance rates due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And only students in grade 1 through 12 are included in this calculation. So in 2018-19, we had 94%, and in 2019-2020, we had 98%. Again, that's just grade 1st through 12th, and we were able to include the remote attendance. Thank you. When we begin looking at what our San Marcos High School graduate looks like, we have our graduate profile. The demographics of our graduates are, we have 69.9% of our students that graduate are Hispanic, 21% of our students are white, 5% of our students are American Indian, and then 6.5% African American, and then 4% other. A little bit more information about what our graduates look like when they graduate San Marcos High School. 61% of our students are at risk. We have 4.6% that are emergent bilinguals, 65.9 economically disadvantaged, and then we have 10.7 that are special education students. We move on to section 1, which also includes the college career military readiness. There are different indicators within the college career and military readiness. We have our TSI, and that is the Texas Success Initiative assessment results, and that is what's required for students to enroll in 4-year colleges, along with SAT or ACT. We also have CTE, cohering sequence, and advanced placement for students, dual credit, and then we also have special education students with higher, that graduate with a higher endorsement. So when we're looking at this here, we look at 2018, and so district, we were at 47.8 in 2018. In 2019, we went up to 71.20. And here with pandemic, we went down to 47.5. So we did come down a little bit. One of the reasons why we feel that this is because we really did have a little bit of a hard time getting kids to come in for TSI. Normally, students take SAT and ACT during the school day in the spring, and so they were not able to test with some of those. Again, those were offered, but because some of the students chose to remain remote, they did not have that opportunity to be able to test. And actually, we were remote during that time. We'll go a little bit more in detail as to what those look like, the different indicators. So when we're looking at our TSI in 2019, we had 37% of students that met TSI. In 2020, we had 33%, so we did see a drop in that. For advanced academics, we had 15% in 2019, and we did see a small drop also down to 12%. Dual credit, 9%, went down to 7%. The significant change that we had was with career and military. And so the state took away the option of being able to count students that were enrolled in CTE courses. And so we used to get 0.5 for students that were enrolled in courses, even if those courses did not have an option to have an industry-based certification. And then also the state took the option away of counting military. In the past, when students would let the counselors or anyone know in the school that they were going to enroll in the military, we would have the students kind of declare that information and we could count that information. The state has been working with the Department of Defense, and that's been a work in progress where we are not able to count the students that are actually enrolling in military. And then the industry-based certification, we did have our EMS and also our, I don't think of problem. Yes, and our CNA that were able to do actual certifications, but some of our other programs really did suffer from being able to take the certification just because that is when pandemic had first hit us, and so we did have a little bit of a drop on that. Since the high school has also implemented using college-based courses that count for TSI credit, and so they actually began that in 2021, where they enrolled all of their senior students in a college prep English course, and out of the 400 and something students that were enrolled, we had approximately like 280 students that were able to get their reading TSI pass through that. Again, that was last year. This year, the plan was to get our students enrolled in not just the English, but also the math, so that we are able to get our kids TSI ready. There are approximately 38 colleges that accept the Texas, the college course, prep courses that are offered here at the high school. So then that way they're able to get that TSI credit without meeting the TSI. The colleges accept that.
One final caveat to that about CCMR, and as President Cantu would know, high school counselors do a significant amount of that work just in wrangling kids to get them to take the TSI, find them to get the certification. So without having students on campus that year, it really was a detriment to that overall success, because a lot of this does in-person work where we're just constantly working with students to fill out applications and do the things that they need to do. So I really think a significant impact was not having them on campus, because we take for granted the things that we do at lunch and in between classes and just trying to wrangle the kids to get them where they need to go. So I have no doubt that the high school will be able to resolve those issues this year. Having the kids back in person is really going to really bump those scores up. So just as a significant, I think that was important to mention.
President Cantu, I'm holding all of my questions except for this one, sorry, because you just spoke on it. For clarification, I know that students take the PSAT from grades 7 through 12 in the fall, and I understand that our juniors take the SAT on campus in March. When do students in which grades are taking the ACT and TSI?
So the TSI, how often do we give it? TSI can be taken as many times as we offer it, and I'm not sure,
So
Denise.
TSI is usually offered monthly, and so I know that there's a process that the high school uses. So there's a process that the high school uses to determine where students are and the areas that they need, in collaboration like with Gear Up and different boot camps that the high school offers. They provide students with that prep work. So for example, if we have a student that tests and they pass their reading, but they're not meeting their math, then those students are kind of grouped together during flex time, and again, provided some of those opportunities so that they are prepared for that. In addition to, they have the department heads that work with the students on those subjects, whether it's reading or math and writing, to ensure that they are able to bring those up, that they are offered.
Every student taking that?
For the TSI?
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
so is it a thing where the students can take it anytime during their 4 years, or are they only taking it during senior year?
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Denisha, on some of this, okay? And so the process begins with seniors. And so with seniors, we begin looking at the students that need to take TSI just to kind of, enroll in college or, but there are also other opportunities for students to take. So for example, we have like freshmen, sophomores that are wanting to enroll in dual credit courses because that is required for them to enroll in those. But then there's also other opportunities where throughout the month, and usually it's kind of towards the end of their like sophomore year that they begin taking those, even for students that are not enrolled in dual credit courses.
Okay, because I'm just trying to get a grasp on when we put this in as a measurement, like who we're measuring at what point in the schedule, right? Does that make sense? I'm
No,
trying to figure
no,
out, is this
absolutely,
based
but
on
for the
sophomores, students who were sophomores during the spring of 2020, or what is?
So for the students that are being reported on here, we're only looking at students that are graduates. And so it's only counting the students that are graduating. So if we had students as a sophomore, that student is not going to count into their graduating class.
So they could take the test, the TSI in reading and math as a sophomore and pass it as a sophomore year, but they don't go into the data until they've graduated.
That is correct.
Okay, that's helpful.
That is correct. And it's
Then what
only
about the
looking at the
ACT?
number of students that graduate. Even if we had a student that was a part of that cohort, but they did not graduate, if that student was, like that student will count whenever they actually graduate.
Okay, and what about the ACT?
For the SAT,
The ACT.
oh, at the ACT, they actually take that in the spring, correct? I want to make sure.
Offer ACT for the group as a whole.
Oh, yeah, I want to make sure I know that it was the SAT. It's the SAT.
Hi, good evening. I'm Debbie Smith, Director of Advanced Academics. We don't offer ACT as a district for a cohort. We offer the SAT, PSAT, SAT, the suite of assessments because they align with each other. But we are a national testing center, so we do offer ACT on Saturdays if students sign up.
So if a student takes the SAT, or the ACT their junior year, then the number gets reported back to us, and if they graduate then the following year, then it counts in that year's data. Am I right?
Yeah, any of those count for CCMR. There's a cutoff score for ACT, SAT, AP that can go into CCMR once they graduate.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Sorry.
Mr. Arredondo, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Cantu. And I understand that the request from staff was to wait till the end of the presentation, but since it's been cited several times, I just wanted to follow up with, we're saying that the significant drop, and it is significant, in college and career readiness is caused by the pandemic, but when we look at state and regional data, there was not a significant drop. So, I mean, I understand that we were virtual for some time that academic year, but we did come back at about 70% in-person instruction. So is there something that our peer groups and the state doing differently than us, that they didn't see that significant drop when they too experienced the pandemic?
Yes, and actually that is really what we saw, is that there were a couple of other school districts that had been using the college prep courses for a couple of years, and that is something that we have jumped on board to ensure that our students are also provided with that opportunity to earn their CCMR credit through the college prep courses. And so again, that information shows in the taper report, when you actually begin to look at it, that there's a lot of students that are getting their CCMR credit through the college prep courses that are offered.
When are we doing the college prep course?
And so the college prep courses, we actually began logging those. It would be with our graduating class of 2021. And again, we begin with the reading and the writing. And so on that aspect, then we still had to count on them passing the TSI when it came to the actual assessment itself, because we didn't have a college prep course. I mean, for the math, we had actually 78 students, because we have two different options of college prep courses. One of them with Texas College Bridge, and then the other one, and I'm trying to think, with Agile Minds. And so within that one there were approximately 70 students that got their math credit. So we'll be able to kind of add those students, those 70-something students, along with to have their CCMR. Now for this year, I think the goal was to see that our seniors were provided that opportunity for not just their reading, but also for the math. And so, those would be our 2022 graduates.
And so does the Khan Academy work also count toward that or no?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The work with the Khan Academy where you take your PSAT and work then through Khan Academy, no.
No, it has to be, again, like with the Texas College Board, it is a collaboration between TEA, and again, several universities, and so different universities kind of have to say, okay, if you do this course, again, it's based on their framework, and based on that framework, it determines like the passing score of the different courses, right? Like whatever they're doing within that, and then at that point, then students can get credit for that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and continue.
Any other question?
Thanks.
So the next section of the table report is going to deal with, through performance, now we're going to look at actually district demographics. And so you're going to see the next three pieces of data aren't performance related, but more demographic related. So the first one that you're going to see is diversity by program. This is grab my glasses again. The numbers of percent of students that we have in each of these programs, students with disabilities, gifted and talented, and economically disadvantaged and non-economically disadvantaged students. So this is a part of the report that's required for us to look at as a district and for you to have information on, so that you can see how our students, and we talk about performing in relation to their for example, our students with disabilities, how they're performing in relation to their non-disabled peers. Also, the next slide talks about the staff breakdown and ethnicity. So without going into a lot of detail about it, as you notice, just in general, our staff is on the left side, our students are on the right side. And you'll notice, for example, 56% of our teachers are white versus 20% of our students, and 37% of our teachers are Hispanic versus 73%. So where there's not just something to kind of keep in mind as we're looking and working with HR and hiring for diversity and looking at the diversity of our students. The question is, does our staff population match our student population? And then the next slide, again, overall staff information. You'll see it talks about the staff information on the left side. When you see that professional support, those are going to be our counselors, our LSSPs, anyone who provides support to the campus who is not a teacher, a paraprofessional, or a campus administrator. And then if you look at the slide on the right, you'll see teachers by year of experience. It looks like we have about 35% of our teachers are first year between 1 to 5 years. But 60% of our teachers have more than 5 years experience, which is really good, which says that we're able to maintain and retain our teachers, especially those with experience, which means we're doing something right. So kudos to HR and to the principals and to staff for making sure that we're really retaining and working with those experienced teachers. The next slide, I think Mr. Doyle has gone over with you previously. The section 2 of the taper has to include information around the district and campus revenues, expenditures, and at the district level, all those things like fund balance. That presentation has been presented to you prior to tonight. Just wanted to make sure that you were aware that that was also a part of the taper presentation in it looks like about a 3,000-page report, but that information is in there as well. Also to note is that generally each year TEA assigns an accreditation status. However, because no district was assigned an accreditation status in 2021, we would not have that. So typically it's going to talk to you about what it's either accredited, ward, probationary, but no one was assigned accreditation in this year due to the pandemic. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that as well. Campus performance objectives. Earlier in the year, you received presentations from the principals over their campus improvement plans. Those performance objectives are included in the campus improvement plan. You all were able to look at those, ask questions, and then accept those previously. So we just want to make sure that you're aware there's a link in your presentation to where you can find those improvement plans. And those are again, have already been approved by you, so you don't have to do any work with that.
So in the taper report, we're also required to publish any violent or criminal incidents. According to Chapter 37, there are incidents that would what would be considered a mandatory expulsion. And so in this graphic, you can see that we have lots of zeros, and so the PEMS code on the left are the codes that would be mandatory expulsions. We do have, for San Marcos High School, we do have 13 for code 36, which is our felony controlled substance. And if you see an asterisk, that is because there are too few to be able to display, so that information, that data is masked. And so we do work with the Texas School Safety Center, our Director of School Safety, Mr. Wozniak. We do employee training. We do we have school safety committees. We work with our students' response protocol. As far as for school violence prevention and intervention procedures, we work with our community partners, especially when it comes to drug abuse or felony controlled substance. Last year, the high school had 7. This year, it's 13. We continue to work with our counselors to get information out and be preventative with that, and work with our families. You may have seen on our social media, we've had already 2 sessions this year with Synacor for our families. We did also do one live on Facebook. And so again, all of this is also in our student code of conduct that we adopt at the beginning of this school year with our preventative measures for this. Thank you.
So part of our table report is that we also have to keep up with our students once they leave us, and the report's going to include information around the district's tracking of those students and where those students go after they leave us at the high school. So the next slide that you'll see, one of the things that we're going to look at is, in this particular graduates, is the class of 2019, because we were able to track where they go. You'll see that 112 of our students, out at the bottom is 508, 112 of our students attended a 4-year public university. You can read most of that, you can read it for yourself, but what I want to point out is there are 2 things up there that once a student leaves us that I think we need to be aware of. One is not trackable, and the other is not found. Not trackable are those students who come to us without a social security number, so they would have a state number. Once they leave high school, that number is not able to be tracked or traced. So those are students that we're not able to find based on the fact that they don't, for some reason, have a social security number when they're in with us. Not found are just students who don't go to either a 4-year or 2-year university or go into an institute of higher education that we can monitor through the system. So this is something you'll see every year. It's going to be put in there, and it's based on the graduating class. It's a lagging indicator. So once they graduate, we track them and see where they go. Yes, ma'am.
When we say they go to a 4-year or 2-year, is that a school in Texas, or is that around in the whole United States?
In Texas, in the state of Texas.
Who's responsible for tracking them?
Texas Coordinator, Higher Education Coordinating Board.
And who from high school keeps up with it?
I'm sorry?
Who from our district keeps up with it?
Is that you, Elena?
So I know that the college and career, Ms. Delgadillo, she actually keeps track with surveys of students. However, for this class here, we don't have information on those students. I know that with the use of school links, again, remember that this information here is still 2019, so this is like information that really is lagging. And so they've implemented, like with the use of school links, so I know for this new cohort of students, we are beginning to use better systems. We're able to track, because with school links, they are able to use, there's an alumni account. And so, so the high school will be able to connect with students, even after they have graduated, to see that they are, kind of checking up on them and seeing what they're doing post-graduation.
We have that many students that don't have social security numbers?
Yes. Yes.
Did I understand correctly that students who go to out-of-state colleges and universities are not included in this total?
No, ma'am, they are not, because, or private, because this is just Texas. Or even if they go to like a Southern Careers Institute, information like that is not being tracked through the Texas Higher Education Board.
Thank you.
TOU, they're not,
But do we really think 400 kids are going to private university or out of state?
297?
So House Bill 3, earlier this year, or actually last year, you received set of numbers from the state talking about your House Bill 3 goals that deals with elementary reading and math and high school CCMR. The board was provided that information, and you set a particular goal for tracking your House Bill 3 goals, which is the % of students who meet score grade level on STAR, and that increases incremental every year. So at this time, when we look at the report, a piece of that is that all K through 3rd grade teachers will complete the Science of Reading Academy. They started that last year or the year before. This is the last year that they're able to start that, and it's a 120-hour course that all teachers who teach students from kindergarten through 3rd grade must complete in order to be able to teach those students. They sign up as a part of a cohort, and they have several months to complete that training, just like our principals do. So this slide talks about, we have 7% complete with our principals, 20% of our students, but everyone is on track to actually complete that on time. Does that make sense? So it's a requirement that the state passed last year, the year before. So progress toward meeting our adopted House Bill 3 goals. As you can see, back in 2019, we were on track. Our goal was 39%. We were at 37% for reading. And then even in 2021, our goal was still 39%. We were at 38%. So we were able to maintain that progress toward our goal, meeting our goal. I attribute that a lot to knowing during the pandemic and knowing that when we had students that we really focused heavily on reading. A lot of our online instruction was focused on reading. Not that we didn't do math, but reading, we all know that that's it seems to be a priority. You also notice that in math, we were on track to meeting our goal 32% in 2019, but we dropped significantly in 2021. Conversations this year have been heavily involved around the math curriculum, the math instruction, and actually next month, I think you're going to be presented with some materials that we are looking to adopt to address some of these deficiencies. But I don't want to blame the pandemic for everything, but it was very difficult with remote learning. Imagine the loss of manipulatives in front of you when you're trying to learn math and not having that in front of you. So we definitely are focusing on math along with our reading as we move forward. Is this you, Elena?
I just wanted to point, I'm going to go back to the last slide here quickly. I wanted to point out that the 39% and the 40% goal were at meets. And so, the numbers don't look really, but again, we're looking at the number of students that are at meets. Okay. And then for this one here, for CCMR, the goal that the board approved, so for 2020, the goal should have been at 49%. So here it highlights the 2018, 2019, and 2020. So as you can see, we were at 47.8. And then I think the high school figured out like what it was that we needed to do. And so we saw that significant increase with our CCMR rate. But then we did drop down again to 47.5. And so I know that the high school has been really working and just making sure that our students are college and career ready. And so I think with some of the efforts and the different, just different things that they're trying, I think we're really going to see that improve.
Last two slides, just so that you're aware, we know there is a lot of information in there. We wanted to make sure that you understand the tape report also has a glossary that provides information around the topics, words, methodologies that are listed. The 2021 taper glossary is available at that link. However, the 2021 taper glossary in Spanish has not been released yet. So we did include the previous, I think it was 2019 to 2020 glossary in there for you. Most of that's going to be similar. The words are going to be the same, and the ideologies are going to match. But we did want to include that link in there for you before until that's released. And then if you have any questions, resources and availability, there are hard copies of this report. Obviously, you have one. If you want to take it home and put it on a bookshelf, you're welcome to do so. If not, we'll distribute it back to a campus for you. But they're available in all campuses and at central office. So if you have any questions, you can address them to us through Mr. Sanders. Yes, sir.
Mr. Arredondo.
Thank you, President Cantu. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Sanders, I don't know who can speak with some authority on this, but I have questions about the 13 felony drug possessions reported in the taper. Do we know what those felony drug possessions were?
Yes,
What substance?
Yes, we do. They were the THC vaping. That is still considered a controlled substance because they are not able to determine the potency in the liquid THC.
So what is the, I guess, and this is now going to be a future agenda item, I'm curious as how we deal with these incidences. Because obviously, given state legislation and testing of concentration, there's a lot of work that goes into verifying whether it is of a certain, I guess, consistency. So I have concerns that we are confiscating these items and then turning them over to the police department, and we are now turning these 13 young people into felons at a very young age. And I know that there's differing opinions about THC and it being in the schools and legality, but I'm just very curious and concerned at how we're going about that, because, again, are these confiscated items being tested? Are we confirming that they're THC?
We
I
do
would
have
like to-
testing kits, and our school resource officers do test them. But I will also just share that the San Marcos Police Department, they don't want to detain students, and they are really working on a system of if it's repeated offenses, they are getting then the charge, because you have to keep in mind for these, it's got to be a PEMS code. And this is a really great conversation. I appreciate you asking. TA has given us some guidance through the Unsafe Schools Division that we really do need to have the PEMS code only entered if the student is detained. And the police department, I think, would tell you if they were here that they are not detaining with the first offense. So these that you would see would be repeat offenders.
I'd be very curious in seeing some type of policy work locally that reflects that, because I appreciate and I'm relieved to hear that there is some interlocal cooperation and understanding between the San Marcos Police Department and ISD staff and administrators. But again, just at face value, I see 13, felony drug possession offenses, and so I think that there are now 13 young people who have now been charged with felony drug possession. And again, a THC vape pen, I would be very curious as understanding how we navigate that process and constitute those offenses here locally and how we get SMPD involved. I understand we have SROs on campus, but if there was a way for us to just confiscate the material and move on with our lives, I think that would be beneficial to everyone. And then even getting those students connected with local resources versus turning them into felons at 15, 16, 17, and 18, right?
And there's two different things, Mr. Arredondo. We have our student code of conduct, so we have our consequences based on that, and it may be alternative education settings. And then there's the other piece where potentially a criminal act, right? And so we're talking about two things. They fall in line, but they are really two separate things. And so I welcome the conversation, and it's moving forward with, having conversations on that.
And
Always.
as a follow-up to that and to prepare staff, I'd really be interested in seeing the demographic breakdown of those 13 incidences and who are these children who are being identified in these situations. So
Okay.
thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Let me just clarify something. We will not put administrators at risk for risking their certifications when the state law is pretty clear about what it is that we're supposed to do. So, this is a conversation I had with the Unsafe Schools Department at TEA, because I'm like, what do you want us to do? So the system actually worked. The high school actually caught the students. We work with the San Marcos Police Department to get them in Senecor or some kind of drug treatment, but this is legislation at the state level. And I'm not gonna ask any administrator not to just take a vape pen that potentially is THC. Now, the answer they gave us, which we hadn't heard, was if they're adjudicated, then that stays as a THC, but if they're not, then we can go back in to the PEMS code and change that and adapt it. But that was my question to her, was like, well, what do you want us to do? This is like a legal mandate, like.
Well, and Dr. Cardona, I appreciate that clarification, and I guess for me, the biggest takeaway was could potentially be THC, right? and for me, at least personally, that is a kind of anecdotal, subjective threshold. You know, does it smell like THC? Do we think it's THC? Did a kid say it was? Again, I would really like to see what type of policy and metrics is being implemented for staff to navigate those situations. So as we move forward, I'd be very interested in continuing this conversation.
Dr. Salmi and then Ms. Hanson.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. I have several questions. So we have our dropout rates at 2% and then, 3.2% and then 2%. Can you give me some idea of what the state and regional rates are for dropout and where we fall? For most of the other data points, we have some point of reference. For that, we don't.
I don't have this state in front of me. It's in your report. I'm sorry, I don't have it with me,
That's
but I
okay.
believe it was 2% on the 2019. So if we were 3.2, the state was 2%.
Okay.
About. I will tell you that the 5-year, the reason that, because you have the 4-year, the 5-year, the 6-year longitudinal, we do have in San Marcos a high percentage of students who do return and graduate either that summer or in early into the year, and they will count as a 5-year if it is past August of that summer, if that makes sense.
Okay. Another one that we had is the graduate profile included a category called at risk, and I'd like to know what that means because several of the other
There is
categories-
some criteria for that. I don't know if, is April here? Or Elena, do you know the criteria? There are criteria indicators, and the campuses are all given the criteria indicators. They work as a campus team to look to see which students would fall on that, but there's like economically disadvantaged, oh my gosh, I can't think of any off the other top of my head. What are the other at-risk indicators? Homeless, English language learner, pregnancy, if they've been retained in a previous year. There's several, and so the counseling, that all falls under our counseling department, and Ms. Chapman oversees that piece of it. But again, they get the criteria. They then look at their campus data, and then that is just an indicator we have to submit to the state for our PEIMS data.
Okay, 2 more. So I was a little confused when you talked about the career and military category of our CCMR status for the 1920 school year. There was a big drop, and it was attributed to changes in what was counted. So I'd like to know what is counted in the 2019-20 school year for if enlistment in the military was not counted as being military, then what was counted?
So all of the other indicators counted. Again, for us, that's where we took our biggest hit. We took our biggest hit with not being able to count the students that were in the past, students that were enrolled in CTE courses. All of those students were able to earn 0.5 point. And so if we had 400 students, for example, that were enrolled in CTE courses, then we were able to get 200 points just from that. And so we were not able to get those points.
Okay.
Yes, and then again with the military, and prior to 2020, we were able to count students that would speak with the recruiter and kind of indicate that they were going to attend. We were able to count those students. The counseling office has a form, and so that form, the students would come in, sign the form, and then we, because we usually have the recruiters that Ms. Ela Math and Eoc kind of communicates with, so we would have the recruiter indicate that they were, and so we were able to count those, but the state has said that we are no longer able to count those, so we actually have to confirm that the kids have enrolled in boot camp, and sometimes the kids, indicated that they were going to enroll right after high school, and when that didn't happen and we weren't able to confirm that, kids might have enrolled at another time, but if we weren't aware of that, then we weren't able, there's no direct link of how we can get that information.
Okay.
And I wanted to provide you, so for, I know you asked about the dropout rates for the state. And so the state was at 1.6 for 2020, where we were at 2%. And then in 2019, they were at 1.9 and we're at 3.2.
Okay, thank you. And last one, I understand that we didn't get an accreditation status assigned in this report. I'd really like to know what the previous past 5 years when we were assigned accreditation were. And I know that may not be available right now, but I'd like that information in the future, please.
We met standard.
Met standard for all the past
Yeah.
5 years?
So the
Okay.
history with the military, going back to that, in 2017, TA commissioner decided to change the weighting from 1 point to half a point
Okay.
after some business people complained and after our kids graduated, right? And so now they've gotten rid of the second part of that 0.5. So if you take coherent course sequence and then you earn your certification, that's no longer, right? That's no longer the case. Yeah, I see CJ over there, shaking his head. And then the military is a result of a couple of districts that were A-rated school districts because they pulled all 150 of their graduating seniors into the auditorium, had a military guy talk. They signed them up, and so they got full points, and then later on find out only 10 of them actually went to the military. I won't name the district, but it's in East Texas. There were several school districts, and so the governor and TA came in and shut that down pretty quickly.
Okay.
They figured out how to
But
get
in that-
around it.
They would count a counseling session as they intend to go to the military, and it was we actually did what we're supposed to do, and now they've taken that away, so.
But referring to, so the accreditation, we were accredited for all previous no warnings. Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Ms. Hanson, and then Ms. Halsey.
Mine's kind of related, so if we didn't get a rating this year, does it show a rating anywhere, or it doesn't fall back, or just no rating, no district has a rating?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. Ms. Halsey?
I just have two questions. One is, so one a question and then one's going to be a request for a future meeting. But the question is a clarification of the change in the label of to emergent bilingual. I'm seeing it in the SMCISD graduation profile. I'm assuming that is that only with the graduate profile, or does that also pertain to our students who are in dual language?
All students.
So our students at third grade who are now in dual language, if a native English speaker is taking the STAR test in English, even though they're in dual language, do they fall under emergent bilingual?
Not if they're native, only if they are identified as English language learner through at the beginning. So if it's a native
Okay.
English speaker, the home language survey. The home language survey would identify whether those students were native English or native Spanish speakers. So if I'm in the dual language program, I'm not necessarily an emerging bilingual if I'm a native English speaker, only from the basis of my home language survey. With
Okay.
that, and that's what we would code as it used to be English language learner, now it's emerging bilingual.
That makes sense, although also I think we need to remember that as the dual language program builds out, that we do expect students in the elementary school years, regardless of what their native language is, to not test at the same level as their peers who are not in dual language classes, that we expect them to recover that and actually exceed it later. But in those elementary school years, my understanding is that they will not test at the same level as their peers who are not in dual language classes. Is that still correct? Okay.
That's what I understand.
All right, so then my second point, and actually it's going to be a request for the March meeting. And I have a better sense now about the SAT, ACT, TCI work, but I'm going to request that in March, we receive a comprehensive report on everything that's being done as a response to pandemic for our current 12th graders in terms of supports for getting them not only to graduate, but to be able to go on to some additional educational opportunities after high school. I'm thinking of assistance with FAFSA, school visits, essay assistance. I want a comprehensive report on everything that we're doing for those 12th graders, and then I want also going back from 8th to 12. So I know 8th graders are making their 4-year plans, and so I want to know exactly how, and I want like detail on this. So that's my.
I don't really understand. We'll figure it out.
Okay,
I'll call
I
you.
can provide some more information,
Yeah.
but I really want to just have us all look really comprehensively at what we're exactly doing to make sure that kids are ready, given what they've been through over the last 2 years, because we're running out of time. So, thank you.
Garrett does some of that. Dr. Cardona. Europe does a lot of that.
Any other questions?
Anybody else? We're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for this.
Great report. Now we have the first semester academic progress update. Is that next? From high school? Nisha's thing, right?
What item is that?
That would be A, under 6,
okay,
reports and
thank you.
information, first semester progress report, progress update.
Great. Good evening, President Cantu, members of the board, Superintendent Cardona. My name is Denisha Presley. I'm the principal at San Marcos High School. Here to share with you our SMHS academic update for the fall. 3 years ago, we started tracking our failure rate, failure data. So in 2019, we were at 61% failure rate in the fall semester. 2020, 53%, and 47% in 2021. What this means in raw numbers, 947 students failed a class or lost credit, one or more credits in grades alone, 362 for attendance. There were 666 who lost credit for attendance. 304 of those students are eligible for an appeal. They are working through the appeal process right now. The 362 represents unexcused absences for students who are going to either who are going to need to retake the course. Before we talk about the different versions of credit recovery that we offer to our students at San Marcos High School, I first want to resurrect this slide that I shared with you in August. And we talked about some of the things that we need to stop doing on our campus so that we can change mindsets and put our focus back on Tier 1 instruction. We said we were going to stop equalizing intervention and education and create a culture of learning and teaching. We wanted to stop overutilizing Button Academy in Phoenix. I believe at one point we had over 200 students in Phoenix, and so you'll see those numbers have gone down, and we are putting kids back in the classroom and really focusing on Tier 1 instruction and a quality education with the human in front of you to teach, as opposed to the online Edgenuity resource that we use in Phoenix, or primarily use in Phoenix. And then we're gonna stop creating additional credit recovery programs, midwinter schools, Saturday school, et cetera, and the list goes on, and build an agreement that we as a community value in-person, quality, high-impact learning experiences for our students. And then we are going to stop midterm exam exemptions so that we can have strong data sets to make sure that we know exactly where our students are at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, and where we expect them to be at the end of the year. So with that being said, we have 6 different ways that you can recover credit at San Marcos High School. Attendance appeals, which are available to all students unless you have a 75% or lower attendance rate. Our attendance recovery is also a plan that we've put together for students who have a 76% or higher attendance rate. Button Academy is for students who we primarily like to focus on juniors and seniors for Button Academy. If a student needs to recover 3 to 4 credits, we can build one section of Button Academy into their regularly scheduled school day, and they have the opportunity to recover credit there. If a student needs 5 to 6 credits to recover, we can build up to 2 sections. Once we get past 5 and 6 credits needed, that student is eligible for Phoenix and probably the best candidate. That might be the best route to recover credits. Phoenix Academy is also, we like to focus on seniors first. Ms. Pearson just talked a little bit about students who return to us. For example, if we had a 2021 cohort student who needed to finish their graduation requirements, we would recommend them to the Phoenix Academy. And then Rattler Recovery, this is very similar to Button Academy. However, the student does not have a period in their regularly scheduled day. They might use the flex period to accomplish their credit recovery during this period, or we have some students who just work from home and they are connected to either a Gear Up coordinator or one of our, we have a couple of teachers on campus who will serve as that person or that student's coach. So basically, if I need to move on to the next unit or move on to another exam, then they email the teacher unlocks that exam, and the student is working fully independent. And then, of course, retake the course. This is something that is fairly new to San Marcos High School, I think. We are primarily for cohorts 24 and cohorts 2025 because they have time and space in their schedules. And remember, we are stressing the importance of Tier 1 instruction versus credit recovery. So it may be that a student is retaking the course in summer school. It may be that they're retaking the course in the fall of 2022. I intentionally left credit protection, midwinter school, and Saturday school on the list with a strike through because, again, we are moving away from credit recovery. So as time progresses, we want to make sure that our kids understand we're here for Tier 1 instruction. We want to get it the first time and not put so much focus on recovering credit.
Could you just explain how the attendance appeal, how does that work?
Right, so we have, our attendance office is amazing. They run various reports, and I pause because there's a report and a letter that goes out to parents for students who miss up to 3 days. And then if you get to 10 days, there's another letter that goes out, et cetera, et cetera. So that's an intricate process that our attendance office can explain way better than I can. Once a student is on a list or in danger of missing credit, or in danger of losing credit for attendance, that goes to our counselors, and Mr. Mario works with our students to and he does more outreach in the building and also outside the building. He does way more home visits than our counselors and administrators have time to do, like during the regularly scheduled school day. And so it goes to our counselors. Our attendance department creates a report. That report goes to our counselors. Our counselors meet with the students, and they offer the students an attendance agreement. And the attendance agreement says, here are the things that I'm going to do to recover these credits. So there's a perfect attendance plan, for example, which a student might sign an agreement, and we say the student's going to attend school 10 days, perfect attendance, start to finish, and then we start working on releasing previous credits lost based on the perfect attendance in the current semester.
And when the students are missing those days, are the teachers also reaching out to the families and the students during that time period?
They are. They are. I'm sorry, I'm having some allergy issues. Yes, our teachers, in fact, we just had a conversation on Friday about about school status and making sure that all of our teachers have the support they need to use school status to reach out to parents.
Okay, and so then when the student makes the agreement and they come back to school and they do so during that 10 days, are they completing assignments that they had not previously completed?
They're completing some, so that's the other piece. Most of them are picking up where they left off. We offer flex period in the middle of during the school day for students to access tutorials. Our grading guidelines say that if a teacher's class misses 50% of their if 50% of the class fails an assignment, the teacher is to reteach and reassign that particular assignment. So that is what we are pushing our teachers to do. And if a student needs to make up additional assignments, then they can do that during flex. We're still here before and after school, but flex is that best period because many of our students ride the bus or work or have other activities after school.
Okay, thanks. This is just to go back to the conversation we had earlier tonight with the additional incentive, and I think one of the things that's occurred to me of why that incentive is so important is because I think we're asking teachers, I've talked to a lot of teachers who have said that, things that they used to do pre-pandemic don't work as well right now. And so they're having to really adapt and change. And not only are we having to cover a whole bunch of different areas and do extra things, but having to figure out new methods while they're in the process. So I realize this is a really incredibly difficult task, and I appreciate everybody that's working toward it. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you. Sorry. Go ahead.
So attendance recovery, again, I talked a little bit about the appeal process. We have 304 students who are in that appeal process right now, and 362 are in the attendance agreement process, and that is in progress. We've conferenced with, we have an all hands on deck attendance day. We've offered 2 of those, and so basically we rally as many parents of students who are having attendance challenges. We have them come to the school. They might meet with a counselor, an administrator, a Gear Up coordinator, and we conference with each of the families to let them know what their options are and show them their transcripts and walk through the importance of each student being on campus. And of course, we don't like to take a punitive approach, and there comes a time where it's called for. Judge Moreno has been incredibly helpful with and in building a partnership with our school. We've had 19 cases heard in truancy court to date.
What happens, what kind of result do you get from that truancy?
What we have, and Rose can speak on this a lot better than I can, because she's actually attended the courts, attended the hearings. One of the things that's been helpful is the court orders the student to come back to school and be in attendance, and we've seen good results with that. We've even had the students now are talking to their friends like, oh my gosh, this is serious, we really have to be there. So again, not trying to be incredibly punitive and fine families, and we really want to stress how important it is for students to get back in school. Through Button Academy and Rattler Recovery, we've recovered 117 credits during the fall semester. We currently have 213 students scheduled in Button Academy and 92 students who are working in that independent format through Rattler Recovery. Through Phoenix, we have recovered 844 credits in the fall semester. There are 14 graduates, we had 14 graduates in the fall semester, and we currently have 91 students in that program. Again, we want it to be manageable, and we want students to be successful in the classroom and not rely on Phoenix Academy for graduation. So total, if we look at Phoenix, Button, and Rattler Recovery, total we've recovered over 961 credits, during the fall semester. So we look at our failure rate and our pass rate, and we also want to take a glimpse at our EOC data. Before we look at our EOC data, I want to resurrect the slide again and just talk about the things that we said we will continue this semester. One thing that we wanted to continue doing is strategically scheduling students in a way that maximizes their individual and academic needs. We want to focus on Tier 1 instruction, utilize our PLCs and instructional coaching, use common assessments to make sure we know exactly where our students are, continue using Canvas as our learning management system and facilitating monthly campus-wide professional learning experiences for our teachers, so that we're not just asking them to improve instruction, we're offering support and coaching to make sure that they feel successful. And then going back to mastery-based learning. So we are calling this semester, that first semester, we spent a lot of time really just trying to reacclimate to school. I don't think any of us can say we could have expected or anticipated what that would feel like. So in the spring, we're having an instructional reboot, and we started in January of just going back to planning, like making sure we are really being intentional about planning our instruction, planning questions, making sure we are engaging all students. emerging bilinguals, making sure we're engaging our sub-pops. So really focusing on planning. And if you might remember this slide from August, we talked about our 2020 EOC data where we saw a decline in Algebra 1, English 1, and biology, and an increase in English 2 and US history. We've taken this data and used that as our baseline. And if you look in our campus improvement plan, we add 10 points to where we performed in the spring of 2021. And that's the target that we set for each content area for 2022 in the spring. So the first thing we did is administered a beginning of the year assessment, and you can see where our students came. Remember the COVID slide, many of our students weren't in school in 2020, 2021. And so you can see where, for example, US history came in as 87%, and at the beginning of the year, we were at 39%. When we tested or assessed again in January, that's when we administered the middle of the year assessment, we saw a jump from 39% to 78%. So our end of the year goal for US history is 97. We're not quite there yet, and our trajectory is we're headed in the right direction. The same thing happened for biology, which is a 66. You can see where the 66 drops down to 28. So at the beginning of the year, our students were performing at 28% in biology. We've increased close to 30% this first semester, and so our goal is to gain, if we continue in the same direction that we're going now, we are confident that we will hit our end of the year targets. And I'll just leave that there for a second for you to.
That's quite amazing.
Is the same assessment given? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm sorry?
Is the same assessment given at the 2 points? I'm a little confused about the beginning of the year assessment and the mid-year assessment.
Actually, Ms. Matielski, you want to talk about how the assessments were developed?
Good evening. I'm Lacey Matielski. The beginning of the year and the MOI, or middle of the year, were not exactly the same, and they were similar. Our instructional coaches on campus worked with the district curriculum coordinators in our TLA department to create EOC-like assessments. For next year, we're in discussions already about that assessment plan and how we can better align those two. But we did pull the data by standard, student expectation, to find as many comparison points as possible. And so we're able to dig even deeper into this data to the student expectation level and see real growth down to inferencing skills, for example. So not identical, but pretty similar.
So at the beginning of the year, 28% of students did not know the course material for the course they were about to take. Is that what I take away from this?
Correct.
Okay.
And so we use our beginning of the year as a baseline data point because we have to know what students know and we want to know what they don't know when they walk in the door.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So again, we're not exactly where we need to be, and we are headed in the right direction. We are right on target to meet our goals that that you approved in our campus improvement plan. So we also know that to truly support students and truly support our faculty and staff, we have to build a strong master schedule. We also understand that our master schedule is one of many, 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 many ways that we support learning, and it is only one. And so our campus has named priorities. I met with our teachers who represented every department in our building was represented by a group of teachers last week, and they brought their departmental priorities. These are our campus-wide priorities. One, we want to make sure we build a strong ninth grade team, ninth grade support team. If you go back to our attendance data and our failure rates, we have a higher percentage of ninth graders who are struggling, adjusting and adapting to high school than other grade levels. And Algebra 1, we really want our Algebra 1 students to be able to meet every day as opposed to every other day. We are also working to build a schedule that allows us to meet the needs or meet the mandates of House Bill 4545 and have those sections actually built into our day as opposed to the flex period that we're using now. We also want to make sure that our teachers have daily conference and or planning periods. We were on an 8-period schedule in 2019, 2020, when we moved into the pandemic, and once we were in the shutdown, we just took that bell schedule and folded it in half, and it was okay because teachers were able to adjust their day. They could meet with their kids for 45 minutes and then have 45 minutes of office hours or tutorials. They had the ability to be a little bit more flexible than what we can be in the building. And so we understand that that's going to be incredibly important as we look to build our schedule for next year. It's just making sure that teachers have that planning time. And then every student graduates with 4 years of math, 4 years of science, 4 years of English, 4 years of social studies while they're on our campus. So while they're on our campus is the new caveat, because our students are taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So what that means for a typical kid at San Marcos High School is that in algebra, you'll have geometry your freshman year, Algebra 2, pre-cal your junior year, perhaps, and then perhaps calculus your senior year, or stats, or it could look different. And I think it's important for us to stress, if we are really thinking about how are we preparing our kids for college, career, and military, this is going to be something that we really want to focus on and push forward. So as of now, we have started our master scheduling and course selection process. We are finishing up cohort 2025 this week. Next week, we'll go in and do makeups and cleanups. There, if we miss students, we have a list of those, and we'll start calling the students to finish their course selection for next year. Our course selections are in school links. They have not yet been uploaded in eSchool. That won't happen until we are completely finished with course selections. Then we call school links. School links downloads our course selections, and then they work with our Student Information Systems Department to upload those course selections in eSchool. In our master course catalog, we know that we have some work to do to clean that up. This is an intricate process that will require support from our IT department. So all of this is happening in real time, and I believe there was a question about responsibility for the master schedule, and of course, that lies on the principal, myself. That is our.
Ms. Halsey?
Thanks so much. This is really helpful. I just have 2 quick follow-up questions. One, you mentioned providing additional supports for incoming 9th graders. I'm also concerned about our current 9th graders, and as they transition into 10th grade, the fact that they've had a lot of upheaval in the last year. So it's maybe not so much a question as a request that we make sure that we're also continuing. I'm not sure if they're part of a Gear Hort co-op or not, but I feel like they're going to need additional supports as they move through the next couple of years. But then my other question is about the scheduling, and so I just want to make sure that the scheduling for next year is going to first schedule the students that are in various subpopulations, such as special ed or diamond lined, or that those students that have multiple.
Well, singletons.
I'm not a scheduler, but my understanding is that it has to do with various subpopulations that have multiple things that they need to have happen during that school year at the same time.
They're offered one time, like athletics, it's offered one time, band is offered one time, and everything has to fall into place around it, all the rest of your academics.
Right. So I just want to make sure that we're going to make sure that those kids all are able to do those things next year, because I feel like there were a lot of bumps in that this year.
Yes, many of the bumps came from students just not being here to do course selection. I mean, that's where many of the bumps came from. Another thing that we have to, when you're building a master's schedule, on a good day, you're looking for 80 to 90% every kid has what they request. There will always be conflicts, so we have to brace ourselves for that. And yes, we will certainly do our absolute best to get to 80 to 90%.
Perfect, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Redondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Ms. Presley, if you don't mind, can you take us back to the attendance slide, the data of students who've lost credit based on attendance? So this data, it's not in the board book, at least not that I could find.
No.
Do you have the breakdown of grade level of these students? Like how many of these are 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th?
I don't have that committed to memory, and I can certainly get it for you. We have it.
I guess my question is there like certain grade levels that this is like trending more? This is reflective of like 9th graders or like seniors have checked out, or I'd be interested in having those conversations and the board being made aware of that, because it's my understanding that at least locally, like 9th grade has always been a catastrophic year for this school district. Like we just lose a bunch of kids that year. Like even when I was in high school, I know attendance and all the things and loss of credit due to attendance was an issue. So I'd be interested in knowing that data and having those conversations, and then moving forward with what additional supports are available to the campus. Because do I want the master schedule to be perfect? Yes. Do I want all the kids to get into all of the classes that they want to get into? Absolutely. But it doesn't even look like our kids are coming to school, right? So, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. So we can offer the classes, they can request them during course selection time. Y'all can build a master schedule that does all the things, but are the kids even gonna show up to school to be in the classes that were in the course selection guide that you built a master schedule for, right? And a follow-up to that statement is just your brief description of how we intervene in attendance issues is concerning to me, just on the front end, because it said that like counselors get involved after like the 6th or 7th absence, and then the attendance office does some things. And I mean, on like day 2 or 3, it seems like we need to be sending somebody to knock on that door and see where a kid is. And I know you have your staff filling other gaps right now in staffing, and so I don't think there's capacity to do that. So I hope we can flush this out further in a future agenda item where it says SMHS staffing update. Because if, I don't know who Mario is, can you explain to me who Mario is?
Mario Hernandez is, he was hired by the district. He is assigned on our campus, and he's, I guess, back in the day, we would call it a truancy officer. What is his exact title? Attendance case manager is his exact title.
So would we say that Mario is responsible? I don't know, like what this data right here reflects how many students?
I'm sorry?
Like this right here, is it 1,136 students?
Yes, sir.
So Mario, based on the information presented today, he is the case manager for 1,136 students?
No, he is not. Each grade level has a counselor, administrator, and a Gear Up coordinator, except seniors don't have a Gear Up coordinator, and Miss Grace works with our senior counselor. So we're looking at, for attendance, 660 students at at various grade levels. So I can get the breakdown of the grade levels for you. Primarily 9th grade, yes, is where we're struggling the most. 9th grade has 2 administrators, 2 counselors that we can't seem to fill vacancies for. So that's been the position is there. Finding the right person to fill that spot is where we're struggling.
So I guess my question then is, what is the apparatus that's in place when a student in any grade level is absent? Is it that a counselor gets involved at day 6 or day 7 of absence?
Ideally, we would want our teachers to be that first level of contact for parents. I'm not here to make any excuses, and I can say that first semester was very tough. Most of our teachers were using their conference periods to sub for their colleagues. And as opposed to, you know, we would like for them to be in their classrooms making phone calls and lesson plans and doing all those things that we dream of doing when we're teaching. The fall semester caused, I mean, it created a different type of situation, like I said in the beginning, nothing that we could even anticipate. And so I can say that we weren't as on top of our game in that area as we would have liked to have been. And in part largely because we were worried more about the functionality of our just day-to-day operations.
Absolutely, and
Sure.
and this is in no way, I hope, to come across as like a slight against the administration or San Marcos High School in particular. It's just, we're asking you to do so many things, and if attendance is obviously an issue at San Marcos High School, what resources can be provided or what additional FTEs can be provided? Because obviously the rubber is not meeting the road somewhere. Right? And I want to identify what that challenge or that obstacle is, because I know there's a lot of interest from this dais about having a good master schedule and a good course selection guide and all the things, but if the kids aren't even here, then it's just performative that we say that we want the kids to have the schedule and the schedule to be correct and all the things, right? Because at 362 kids, I mean, that's a significant chunk of the campus's enrollment. And that's
Absolutely.
the people who have met the threshold of losing attendance. I wouldn't even want to know what it is underneath that threshold, right? Because based on attendance, how many times do you have to miss to lose credit for attendance?
10.
10. So,
11 or,
By
yes.
course.
After your 10th absence, you've lost credit for the semester.
okay. So again, I hope that we can continue having that conversation, and if Mario is this grant-funded position to do some type of more robust intervention, then that's great, but it seems like we need more than one person or a handful of counselors, and obviously we've discussed at great length that teachers and administrators are going above and beyond right now. So my concern is that these follow-throughs and these attendance, knocking on doors, operation is not happening. So I want to make sure that it is, and I don't think that's just telling y'all to do it. I think it's providing additional support to make sure it happens. So anyway, thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
I'm most concerned about seniors because they have so little time to recoup their credits. So I'm interested also in seeing the breakdown of those seniors that have lost credit.
Our senior team does an excellent job of identifying where I have a spreadsheet that I can pull at any moment and see exactly how many students, which students, how many absences, what the plan is for them. They do an excellent job of monitoring and tracking our seniors.
Good. Ms. Hanson had her hand up, and then it'll be you.
I appreciate this presentation and all the work that went into not only do the presentation, but all the background work that's gotten us to this point. It's quite a lot of work, and it's pretty amazing. I thank you for sharing. And I would like Dr. Cardona to please share this presentation with us in an email so I can study it more carefully. I really do appreciate your time and effort, and of the whole, not just you, but the whole school.
They're working hard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr.
Yes, thank
Nominee?
you. Could you go back to the first slide? I think I misinterpreted it and I just wanted to. Okay, so this is the percent of students. Can you explain this slide, please?
Yes, ma'am. This is the percentage of students who have lost one or more credits
Okay.
during
so
the
it's-
fall semester. And this next slide, those are the raw numbers. So that 1,136 represents 47.88% of our student body.
Okay, and so they lost one or more credit. That's the number of credits that have been lost out of something like 20,000 credits.
Those are
among
the
all
number of
students.
students who have lost one or more credits.
Okay, okay. And so that's going down. Yes, I did misinterpret it, so thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.
And we've taken care of C, the high school staffing update, I believe. We're going to skip C, D, and move on to operations update. Mr. Sandoval?
Ms. Cantu,
Oh,
can
do
we
y'all
take
want a
a
break?
quick 5-minute break?
I could just need to, yeah, that'd be great.
Let's take a,
I'm
let's
gonna
take
stand.
a little break here. Is it 7:40? I've got 7:34. Let's come back at 7:40. Break time. Everybody can stretch for a second.
trying to divert them from mandatory punishment.
I'm just gonna have to get half the time.
Have Mono Amiga go after the stay, please.
We're gonna come here first.
We
Or some of them may
inadvertently
have a
left
THC
out
base,
Del
but-
Mitchell with his first semester academic update. And so he says he's got a short report, and he put one, copy of the report on your place at the dais. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, absolutely. Good evening again, and I appreciate you working me in. It will be quick. I took your advice last time and took your notes, and so you'll see on your report, there are actually 3 different sections. The first, you'll see there are 3 slides that I'll go over with you. Those slides are a summary of the first 9 weeks grade distribution, as we reported last time, as well as a failure report. The next 5 pages in your packet are the disaggregated data on failures from 3rd grade all the way through high school. And then the last 2 pages are high school credit data that we were able to pull just so that you could see you had asked for individual courses and the information around those courses. So these are the last 2 pages are the high school data. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to help to answer those. However, I have summarized all of that information into 3 very easy to read and very quick slides. The first slide that you'll see is our overall grade distribution from 2nd grade through 12th grade. I won't read that information to you, but you can see that the second column in our second 6 weeks, our second 9 weeks, our distribution shifted from high A's and lower C's to higher C's and lower A's. In other words, our number of A's decreased while our number of C's increased, and B was stayed pretty steady. But in reflecting, we met the first 9 weeks, and principals had really difficult conversations with teachers about the grading and what grading should look like in returning back from to school this year. We know in the beginning of the year, the first 9 weeks is a lot of review, and so we would expect a higher percentage of A's and B's the first 9 weeks, especially the elementary, when it's just a lot of review work. And in the second 9 weeks, you'll see in that second column under each, the information is new information. For example, long division is introduced in 4th grade. So as you can imagine, as the difficulty increases and the rigor increases, fewer numbers of A's and larger numbers of B's and C's along the way. Also, there was a slight surge right before, as we know in winter, a slight surge of COVID in the winter break, and so that may have had a slight impact. But overall, these aren't alarming numbers. Our F's didn't increase dramatically, a 2 to 3% increase for the most part. Our SPED numbers, actually, when you look at our A's, our number of A's under our SPED and our LEP increased, so we were able to address some of those concerns that we had first 9 weeks, and that's a positive. And so just wanted to share that information so that you're aware just across the board, not just who passed and who failed, but where the grades were distributed evenly among the grade levels. The next slide is just the percentages of the information that's obtained behind you. You have detailed information, 3rd, 4th, 5th, every grade level. But overall, you can see when it comes to failures, again, it was pretty consistent. Even though our numbers of failures increased a little bit, they're not significant. Well, they're significant because there's an increase, but not dramatic. It's not gone from 2% to 10% across the board. So just wanted you to have that information as a reference as you're looking at the information and the data behind it. And then finally, looking at our Ela Math and Eoc, as I presented last month, I told you that we were going to focus on reading and math, and then our special populations of our SPED students and our LEP students, those emerging bilingual students. So I wanted to provide you with that information from first 9 weeks to second 9 weeks. Again, pretty consistent along the way, but I wanted you to have that information in front of you as you look through the information behind it so that you can have that summary data. Pretty simple, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, knowing that you haven't had an opportunity to look at all the data behind it.
Anyone? It's hard to come up with questions when we just got this. and
I
we haven't had a chance to
understood.
Look at it. But we may have some for you later on.
And I'm happy to answer questions anytime, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mitchell.
Absolutely.
Move on to our operations update. Mr. Sandoval?
Okay, good evening, Board President Cantu, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Cardona. Time for the operations update. We'll be looking at construction, facilities, transportation, and child nutrition. Not a lot to cover this evening. I know 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to get in depth on the agenda prep and budget to talk about the new central office as well as the supplemental bond. So as far as construction is concerned, making some progress at Miller. We're about 80% done on technology and about 95% on millwork. You guys have heard me talk about millwork before, and we're actually making some progress. The building is set to be commissioned starting February 21st. There's an agenda item later on this evening. We need for y'all to approve a firm to come in and do mechanical, electrical, and plumbing commissioning. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain what that commissioning actually means?
Sure. So that is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. All that's in the building that's been installed. Part of the closeout process is to get an outside company to come and do test and balance on the HVAC units, just to make sure everything is installed and working according to its design and
Thank you.
plan. We're still looking at a March 6th date for Weber to be out of there, and then of course we're going to be looking at any kind of unfinished and non-conforming work and look at a negotiation from the retainage that's due to them. As far as De Zavala is concerned, the canopy will begin work on March, this next March, or this coming March, utilizing spring break. It's a projected timeline of about 4 weeks with minimal disruption to the campus. And then this same firm that we'll agree on tonight will also do the commissioning for De Zavala. And like I said about the supplemental bond and new central office, we'll get into depth on the 28th. As far as facilities, energy management, we did get the bids back for emergency power for 2 generators, one here at the high school, and that dollar amount is reflected there, $368,000. And this will give us all lighting and HVAC, which is your air conditioning and heating and hot water in both gyms and the SAC. We do have ESSER funds planned for that cost. And then the other bids we got was for IT and child nutrition building. We have 2 options there to go either with the stationary or allow it to be mobile in case we wanted to move it around the district. Those are the 2 prices there. We're still talking to the vendor about these prices, and then of course if we decide to do that, we need to look at funding that, which will probably or may probably more than likely be in the supplemental bond project. Just a quick winter storm update for last week. I think it was last week when we were out 2 days. Our campus and facilities performed well. We did have a fire sprinkler line break at Bonham, which did not do any damage inside. It was mainly on the outside. And then we had some boiler issues at Bowie, which have been addressed. As far as transportation, we did introduce Smart Tag. And Smart Tag is a system designed to increase the safety and security of students who use school bus transportation. It's a secure onboard tablet on each school bus, and it will record when a student gets on the bus, and then off the bus, provides real-time information for school administration and parents. How does Smart Tag work? It's basically a badge that we give the bus riders. They scan it, and the bus driver's able to tell if they're on the right bus, and then also we'll make sure that the student gets off at the correct stop. So what does this do? Parents can turn on message notification when they register on a website. So they're going to receive text messages when the bus is approximately 10 minutes from pickup or drop-off location, which is going to help with the amount of time students have to stand out in inclement weather, and parents have to wait at a bus stop. So we did turn the feature on in mid-January. We were doing a pilot program on February 2nd with the Bonham pre-K students. The portal went live for all parents on February 7th. We sent some notification via Blackboard, and then district-wide notification on February 8th. So this is a neat feature for all our bus riders. And then finally, as far as child nutrition, just a note on there that all the related waivers that we had due to COVID are going to end in June 20th, 2022. So at that point, all national school lunch and breakfast programs will return to pre-COVID regulations. And then USD is releasing nutritional standards for school meals. SMCISD Child Nutrition is already meeting all those nutritional guidelines that were proposed for the 23-24 school year. And that's all I have this evening. Any questions?
Questions? Ms. Villalpando?
What happens when the family doesn't have this capability? I think this is marvelous, to have a little tank and to know whether a student has gotten on the bus or off, all that.
The only way they're gonna be using it is if they have the app, or if they've gone into the application and signed up for text notifications. And if they've done that, then they'll be able to get the notifications when the bus is 10 minutes out.
I understand that. Dr. Condona, what do we do for families that don't have this capability? Is there any record keeping or anything that we can assure our students
I think
know what bus they're supposed to be on and all that kind of stuff?
they'll still have the tag, correct? This is, yeah, the old processes of identifying what kids go on what bus are still gonna be in place. This is it will still keep track of the student, even if the parent doesn't have it, so we can, so if the parent calls us, then we can check and say, well, hopefully it never happens, that they're on bus 71 instead of bus 72. But we understand sometimes at the first week of school.
Thank you.
May get on the wrong bus. Mr. Redondo, or who had their hand up?
Sorry, I just want to make sure that it's the student has a badge and it goes to the parent's mobile device, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Well,
And so-
the parent's gonna, if they sign up for text notifications, they're gonna get text messages letting them know where the student is or where the bus
Right,
is.
I'm saying we're not depending on students having mobile phones.
No.
But the student has a badge, right? And so I just wanted to say to Trustee Villalpando that in conversations that I've had with people at Community Action and other agencies, including WIC, I think that the understanding is that the rate of adoption for families for having at least one mobile device in the household, especially for a family that has a student, is very, very, very high. That's the primary use that most social service agencies are using, is my understanding, so.
Dr. Sami or Mr. Redondo?
Thank you. Is there a cost associated with this usage on our system for the
No.
smart tag?
No.
So the district is not paying for this?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Redondo?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Sandoval, if you could go back to the food, or you don't have to go back to the food service slide, it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna ask about food service. At one point in time, our child nutrition department was operating at a budget deficit because we were not producing and delivering and dispersing the number of meals that we had historically provided. Has that situation stabilized itself, or can you tell us about that?
It has, and we had Denise and I had a conversation with Mike Boone last week. We're actually in the black. I don't know what the amount is, but
Speaking of that now, in the black budget, I know this board at one point in time went round and round about compostable and biodegradable lunch trays and utensil materials and things like that. And it's my understanding that because of supply chain issues and just all the things, that is a luxury that we just can't facilitate now. I would be interested if Mr. Boone is willing, and if the Child Nutrition Department staff is willing to explore this, the feasibility of bringing back actual lunch trays and utensils. And obviously that would require washing of the lunch trays and staff and equipment. So I'd like to know what that would look like if the ISD pursued that. So in a future, meeting, I would like that information.
okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Sami, did you have something else? No?
That was all.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Sandoval. Move into item 7, approval of consent agenda items.
I move that we approve the corrected copy.
I will second President Cantu.
It's been moved by Ms. Hanson and seconded by Mr. Arredondo that we approve the consent agenda item on the minutes for the regularly scheduled meeting for January 18th and February 7th. All in favor? 3, 6, none opposed. Number 8, items for action. Consider an order calling an election to be held on May 7th, 2022 for the purpose of electing 2 trustees.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Ms. Gunter in our central office, she put together great information in the board book, and I can answer any questions that you may have, but the first one, ordering calling of elections for May 7th, is for District 4 for Ms. Kathy Hansen's seat that is currently being served by Ms. Hansen, and then District 5 currently served by Ms. Cantu. The order of election and the joint election contract has the Exhibit A for locations, which is also in the board book. This is subject to change based on the Commissioner's Court on February the 15th. So if this is approved and the Commissioner's Court has any changes, we'll report those changes to the board. And these locations won't be confirmed until March the 8th.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. I have no issue approving the order of elections for District 4 and District 5. I do have some questions regarding our newly implemented single-member district maps for 4 and 5. Has it been communicated with the elections office that they're gonna have to update the voter rolls to reflect that there are now new geographic areas in the ISD that are in districts 4 and 5? And if so, I guess, has that notification taken place?
I'm not 100% sure, but I can verify that information tomorrow.
Okay, so there's that. Obviously, I want people who are eligible to vote in the District 4 and 5 elections who have now newly been redistricted to be eligible to vote in those elections. Secondly, the ISD map that is on our website is now outdated because of the newly implemented single-member district plan for 4 and 5, but actually just 1 through 5 in general. If we could expedite the process of updating that map and even providing as high of a resolution as possible, because it's pretty bad, honestly, like to see where people live and what streets they are, and so whatever service or vendor we have to go through, I don't know if that's Mr. Rios, the attorney, or whatever service that is, but just having a newly updated map that is high resolution is another request that I have as we move forward with the election process.
Definitely.
I do know that, to answer your first question, that Mr. Rios provided to Hays County the new map so that they could notify those people, but I'll check on the imagery.
And also on whatever we have online for our school district.
We did update one section of the website, but I think we did miss, now that you've mentioned that, we did miss one portion of the website where the Board of Trustees photo is, so we'll get that fixed.
Awesome, thank you. That's all I got for this.
Any other questions or discussion? Ready to vote?
No, I have a question.
No.
We have to,
I have a question.
Yes.
So my question is about the voting locations are throughout Hays County. I understand that we now have the universal polling places, but I'm confused as to how the costs are getting split. And are those other school districts in Hays County having elections on the same day as us? And are we dividing then the cost based on the precincts? This is very confusing, and I'm just trying to figure out if we're paying a premium because we now can vote for the San Marcos CISD School Board at a location in Dripping Springs.
Definitely. So Ms. Gunther provided that answer for me. The formula is based on the amount of registered voters in SMCISD jurisdiction. It provides more accuracy in allocation, the costs associated with individual elections. This way, each entity will have their percentage of cost. Not only that, but will enable eligible SMCISD voters to use common polling locations and election officers and provide for other benefits and conveniences to SMCISD. This will use one set of election officers and clerks at elected precincts that are served by the common polling places on election day and during early voting. And each entity shall share in the expense for election officials and polling locations in accordance with the cost-sharing agreement to be worked out between the parties through their authorized representatives.
Okay, that sounds great, but who are
Does
the
sound
entities?
fantastic.
I mean, what does that actually mean? Because if we're the only entity, then we're paying 100% of it, so.
I would.
We'll look into
I
that.
mean, obviously, we can't go back and change the polling locations at this point, but I would like some clarification on that going forward, because that might be something that we would like to address at some point in some manner, if we're now paying a significantly increased cost for conducting the school board election. So. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and move that the board approve the attached order calling for an election on Saturday, May 7th, 2022 for purpose of electing 2 trustees to the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District Board of Trustees.
I will second, Ms. Cantu.
Motion made by Ms. Halsey and seconded by Mr. Arredondo that we call the election for May 7th for the purpose of electing 2 trustees. All in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 0 opposed.
Ms. Cantu?
Yes.
I move that we approve items B and C, consider contract with Hayes County for the purpose of election services, and consider the contract with Hayes County to participate in a joint election to be held on May 7, 2022.
I'll second that.
Moved by Ms. Hanson and seconded by Dr. Salmi that we contract with Hayes County for the purpose of election services, and C, consider contract with Hayes County to participate in joint elections for May 7th, 2022. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please raise your hand. 3, 4, 5, 6. 0 opposed.
And we'll get that information to the board once I follow up with Hayes County.
Thank you. Start. The discussion action to approve the Redistricting Committee to work on a method of election plan to elect all 7 board members from single-member districts after the May 2022 election, which said plan would be submitted for final approval by the Board of Trustees. Discussion?
Do we have a date that they would be expected to send us the plan, or?
I have not heard from Mr. Rios.
I mean, if we approve this, can we set a date, or what do we, I don't want it to be a year later, are they to do this within 6 months, 3 months?
I don't think Mr. Rios is here to give us a report, and I
Well,
have
but-
not heard anything from him. And have you, Mr.
Not at
Dr.
all.
Cardona? No? Mr. Arredondo, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Cantu. I'm under the impression that this ended up on the agenda because of comments that I made. So just to share where my thought process was, when we had the conversation about accepting or rejecting the Redistricting Committee's proposal, which the board rejected, citing time, lack of community input, and a litany of other reasons, it was cited that if the conversation continued and if there was more outreach in the community and more citizen input, then those that were hesitant to adopt the 7-member plan would feel more, comfortable that a conversation or dialogue took place. So I don't know if that's us having these public hearings, as board members, or facilitating this community conversation, but I'm assuming it's the work of the committee to continue doing that, or to prove that they've done the outreach into the community that I think some board members wanted. So it's just directing them to do that. I agree with Trustee Hansen that there should be some date for this committee to make that recommendation to the board again, but I guess that is where even I'm independently confused, because they've already made the recommendation once, right? That was Mr. Rios's, and the committee's recommendation was 7 single-member districts several meetings ago, and the board rejected that recommendation. So again, I guess we can ask them to make that recommendation a second time at any time in the future, next month, in 6 months, in 9 months, whatever that is. I don't know what's gonna change personally, but again, it was the conversation from the dais that was we needed more community input and outreach and engagement. So I think this is creating a timeline to do that so that we can reconsider that initial proposal that was rejected by the board.
I know that some of the trustees were concerned that we not let too much time go by, but I don't think we're ready to act on this. But did you have something, Dr. Song?
Sure, yeah, I do. The 7-member districts were never drawn and proposed to us, and so it'd be helpful to have an idea of what the different districts would be in that proposal.
I couldn't hear the last
It would be
part.
helpful to have an idea of what the different districts would be in that proposal, and I think we all received an email requesting information so that that committee could make those districts. Does anyone know if that information has been provided to that redistricting panel? The information needed for them to evaluate the whole and make 7 districts.
Yeah, it was my understanding that Mr. Rios and his committee were going to meet another time, sometime February, March time period,
Okay.
and that we would be getting more information.
Okay.
But we do have some information from from the legal counsel Rios
Uh-huh.
back here in part of our board book. So shall we just leave this item for discussion at this time and then move on?
I mean, if,
Yes.
so the reason why this ended up on the agenda, I guess now that Dr. Salmi made the comment, and I remember, one of the committee members had said if they had been provided additional resources, financial resources to do more data work regarding the 7 single-member districts, to see what those would look like, to match them up with communities of interest, specific neighborhoods that are commonly known in San Marcos, that I think they could have provided a more robust proposal to the board. And so it was my understanding, just anecdotally talking to a couple of the committee members, that Mr. Rios's computer system is pretty archaic, right? It's like still dial-up internet over there that they're using. And so it was just cited that it was very difficult to have those types of conversations and move the district boundaries and try and put communities of interest or neighborhoods together. So I don't know, I'm happy to like wordsmith a motion here to provide necessary funds or resources, but again, I'm gonna kind of make this a reoccurring agenda item, because these things tend to like get away from us, right? And then in 6 months, we're gonna say, oh, it's too close to the 2023 elections, we gotta wait another year, right? So I want this on the forefront of the conversations that we're having, so I guess, again.
So we can continue to put it on the next month's agenda and see what information comes back from the redistricting committee.
I mean, but I
Can we
guess,
have a motion so that we don't just keep talking in circles? Perhaps that would help.
so then I make a motion that we approve the redistricting committee to work on a method of election plan to elect all 7 board members from single-member districts after the May 2022 election, which said plan should be submitted to the board for final approval by the Board of Trustees.
I second that motion.
Okay, so we have the motion that will approve the redistricting committee to work on this election for all 7 board members from single-member districts. And we have a second from Dr. Salmi. Any further discussion or questions?
President Cantu.
Yes.
Dr. Cardona, can you remind me, as superintendent, what is your purchasing authority? What is the threshold for that?
Up to $50,000.
So if there's not disagreement from the board, could we, through this motion, allow you to provide less than that to this committee?
Up to the,
Yeah, the 50,000.
I'll get with Mr. Rios, and then Mr. Fernandez and I can work on something, and we'll get with Ms. Garcia and Mr. Doyle.
Okay,
We'll figure it out.
thank you.
so you're amending the motion?
Well, it's not, it's just like the motion in and of
It's
itself
just me to start.
Okay.
with his
Further
authority as
questions or
superintendent.
discussion? Ready for the vote? All in favor, please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 6, 0 opposed. E, consider approval of contract with National Center for Urban School Transformation in the amount of $120,000 for an equity audit in San Marcos School District, and authorize superintendent or his designee to execute contract.
Ms. Cantu, are we getting a presentation?
I don't have a presentation, but I will entertain questions. I mean, I have the information here if you have any specific questions.
Sure. Yeah, I have some concerns and a motion to be made. We recently approved an equity and inclusion officer to be hired. To my knowledge, that person has not yet even been interviewed. We also recently conducted an equity audit. To wit, there was not much action that I can point to that was taken, and a lot of missing information. So I think that it would be putting the cart before the horse to authorize another equity audit before we have someone whose role it is to be accountable for that equity audit and understand the deliverables that are going to be presented to us. I would like to make a motion. Can I make a motion now, or do we want more discussion? I'd like to make a motion that we table this until we've hired an equity officer to be
Where are we
responsible
on
for
the
this.
Equity officer, are we just waiting for it to be later in the spring?
Applicants.
For applicants?
A pool of applicants. We have a video process and then the application process, so.
With what kind of a timeline?
Candidates have to complete both the application and the video, 4 questions. So thus far, we've probably had 39 applicants that have filed through the district, but only 17 have actually completed the videos.
What's your
So
deadline?
they have to do
What's your deadline?
we don't have a deadline.
Oh, okay, it's just open-ended.
Correct.
Ms. Hanson, did you have something?
I have several questions. I don't know if you can answer them now, but.
Yes, ma'am.
Well,
First of all,
before we go to that, is there gonna be a second to
Second.
trustee?
I'll second the motion. To table.
Ms. Villapando says she'll second. Go ahead and ask your question, Ms. Hanson.
Okay. Even if it's tabled, I'd like to know this answer before we look at it again. I'd like to know, what are the parameters of this audit? Is it gonna include all students in all schools? Because the last one didn't. I'd like to know why it's so much more than the last one as far as the contract. When will it be completed? And will it have ideas for improvement and suggestions? Because the last one didn't.
Okay, yes. So if you recall, last year when we presented this, we did present it as a 2-part, and we did the feeder schools to Miller Middle School and San Marcos High School. And so this part 2 was to do our other feeder schools to Goodnight. So that would include 4 campuses. And they would do the basic overview of disaggregating data to look at graduation rate, dropout rate, discipline, and look at the correlations to those, and look at our students of color and how that correlates to those parameters. As far as the proposal, it was done in 3 parts. And so the proposal went up as the first part being the full evaluation on the data that I just mentioned, and analysis, interpretation of that data. And then the second part was to facilitate a comprehensive anti-racist leadership training for the district and campus administrators. So we did take into account the recommendations from the first audit. It was to look at data in a more granular manner, but it was also for us to get training across the district. And so this audit proposal does include that as well. And it does also include doing the survey again for the other 4 schools. And it also includes training for our campus leadership as well, intense training for our campus leadership. So the cost has all of that. That's why it's significantly more than the last time. And also because this is a hot topic right now across the state of Texas and really nationwide. So it's expensive to hire consultants. If we do not do the principal in-depth training, that would be something that could potentially wait until we do have our executive director of equity on, then it would be about $72,000, is that correct, Mr. Sandoval, for just doing the overview and then doing some of the campus and district professional development.
So would they pull in the information from the previous audit?
We would provide it to them, absolutely. That would be part of it. And, you know, we felt like this one was providing the best for the dollar amount. We did use criteria to analyze these and then make our determination with which one we wanted to bring forth to you all.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Ms. Pearson, I'm sorry if I missed this. I was looking at my notes here. Would the $120,000 equity audit reflect pre-K through 12? It would go across the entire ISD?
So the 2 of the parts would be for everyone, pre-K-12, but the first part where we analyze the data, we don't need that for all of our campuses because we have that for the other 5 campuses, so it would only be for the elementary feeder schools into Goodnight.
Okay, so just as like a follow-up and just like full disclosure, individually I was pretty disappointed at the first equity audit and the deliverables that were brought to the board. I really don't know what that equity audit told me, to be quite honest with you. Like, I've watched that board meeting several times and it really didn't show like what we were doing well or doing poorly. It was just kind of like an anecdotal, like, do you think we're doing a good job? And we asked students and parents and things like that. Looking at the National School Center for Urban Schools Excellence, I'm pretty intrigued and like optimistic about their equity and excellence audits because it is comparative. It sees actually what policies and procedures are in the ISD and compares them with other ISDs across the nation. And so that is something that was, at least in my understanding, during the presentations of the first equity audit, were not provided by the vendor and that equity audit assessment that we saw. So I'm interested in pursuing this, and the data and the deliverables that at least I'm hoping are in here based off of this organization's website. So although I do believe that we should have that executive level position in place, I am hesitant to say, you know, we're going to hire this person in 3 months or however long that takes, and then they're going to start, and then we're going to have the audit and however long that process takes. And then very quickly in public school business, I've seen that these things take a very long time to just get the data that we need to start doing the work. So again, I don't know. I just hope we could move forward with this, but.
Yeah, we did check references, and we received a bunch of what you just described, that it was very comprehensive, and we would get a equity coach that's assigned to us. Should we pursue it, we'll have someone that's assigned to us from their company, so.
And just as a follow-up to that too, I know the equity audit that was presented by Dr. Cardona pre-pandemic was very different than what was delivered, and I think Mr. Benson alluded to that because a lot of the, I guess, like the site visits were virtual site visits, and they were watching Zoom classroom and interactions there. And obviously, that is not the interactions that are taking place between our full-time educators in the classroom and the students like today. So now that that's behind us, I'm concerned if we rely on that first equity audit data to guide our work, because I think it was a sampling of experiences and operations that are not what are currently and historically have been occurring in the ISD, right? Like they watched us in Zoom online school for a couple of months, and not what we're doing today and the interactions that are happening with staff and students face to face. So if this is pursued in the future, or if, you know, we don't table this tonight, I would really hope that we would try this again. And I understand that there's hesitation with the cost projections for this, but to say that we can use the equity audit for the first 5 schools from the data from the equity audit of the first 5 schools that were in that report, I don't think that's true and viable data, because it's from a ecosystem that just isn't what's happening today. So anyway, thank you.
Yes, I understand. I did want to also just add that we did have some action steps, and they may have been more global, comprehensive action steps, but we did purchase Qualtrics, and you may have heard of that metrics, and we did align our bullying reporting form to include a district-wide way for students and families to report racism, and so, or racial slurs, remarks, and so students have that on their Canvas platform, and they have the link on there, and Rattler Speak Up, it's a little icon, they can see it, and it is being used. So, I mean, I can tell you students are using it. It's part of the legislature also with law. We have to have a way for students to anonymously report, but they are also able to let us know their name, and we can do full investigations that way as well. And then we also did have training for our principals, a couple actually at the beginning of the year. Going into the year, Dr. Valadez we did one at our principals training, and many of our principals are learning. As you know, this is something that is they need a lot of support. It's can be a sensitive topic, and so they are starting equity and inclusion teams on their campus. I know Mr. Mancini over at Travis has one that he's been doing for a couple of years now that we want to use as a model. So I'm really happy with the work we're doing here. I think with having all hands on deck, having the new position, having data and information, it'll help us move forward.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm very sympathetic to both arguments for tabling and for moving forward, but I think that given the exigencies of the pandemic and the fact that I feel like this really is another element that is immediately affecting the health, the well-being, the mental health of our students, of our staff, of our administrators. And as much as I am very anxious to have that director in place and taking ownership, I am reluctant to lose time in the collection of real-time data that we need and have that data set that we have, as imperfect as it may be. And I am aware of things that have gone on and that implementations have been made and that trainings are in progress. And we're trying to make changes as we go, but I think we need more information, and we can't wait really, and we can't afford to have that potentially stall out. Especially because, as you mentioned, I think there are a lot of people across the country who are trying to hire a position similar as to ours. And so there's a lot of competition for that right now, and it might mean, unfortunately, that we have to wait, that the search takes longer than I think that we would want it to. So I would like to have our administrative team, having seen what we've seen and realized the strengths that we've had in the successes, and also some places where we could have done better with the first steps. Go ahead and move forward with this so that we just don't lose any more time, and that we can really begin. I mean, even at this point, we're going to be hard pressed to have these trainings in place and to have the programs in place by the beginning of the school year. I mean, any programs in place or extended programs in place. So I'm in favor of moving ahead with it at this point. And if adjustments need to be made in the future when we can get that person on, and maybe that's, in the next 3-4 weeks, and they can take charge of it right off the bat, that would be great. But I just don't think that our students can really afford to wait any longer. So.
Dr. Salmi?
Yeah, thank you. So what is the timeline if we were to approve this, if the board chooses to approve this expenditure? What would be the timeline for starting this equity audit, and who would be responsible for gathering the information needed for them to perform these?
So we would have an initial team that would meet with them. So Mr. Edwards and Mr. Sanders and myself. I'm not sure if we would include any other directors, but we would meet with the team and make sure that we have our IT department who's working behind the scenes to pull the data. That's usually kind of the first step after we've discussed the deliverables. But the proposal did have the deliverables very detailed, and also the outcomes that we were expecting. So we would like to start in March. It's mid-February now, so as soon as we can. And then I think that we could probably have a presentation to you all in July with at least the analyzing of the data we have from the campuses on the graduation rate, dropout rate, discipline, and all the correlations with that.
So the report would be available in July if we started now. And then this $120,000 includes intensive district professionals development, as well as training for campus leadership?
That would be ongoing. And so that would be ongoing, starting in March, but onto the summer months, and then into the early fall.
And who would perform the training? Is that
the same company? Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Cantu.
Yes, Mr. Redondo.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. So obviously, this is in our board book as like a recommendation from the administration to move forward with the contract. I guess whoever started this operation internally within the ISD, can you explain the rationale behind why we went out for another competitive sealed bid proposals for this service? What was the information, the expectation? Well, I guess what was the expectation that this report was going to gather? Like, what additional information is the administration looking for in an equity audit that wasn't provided
the first time around, or what are you hoping to accomplish this time and with this process that's different?
So I think it was my understanding that we wanted to have a full comprehensive look at all of our campuses. So this is part of satisfying the other, making sure that the other campuses' data is also analyzed. But I would imagine, to be quite transparent, that we're going to find lots of similarities in what is delivered to us. But like I said, this proposal also has the additional 2 components, which is the professional development and also starting to create policy, district-wide policy regarding what is found.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Ms.
I
Villalpando?
just would like to thank everybody for the discussion because it's really had a lot of good questions that we needed to have answered. So.
I think it's been a good discussion. My question was, did the previous consultant leave any kind of a written report that could be shared with the board?
Yes.
'Cause I don't think we've received it.
We have an executive summary.
You have an executive summary?
We do.
I would love to see that executive summary. I don't know about the rest of the
Yes.
trustees, but I think that it would be worth looking at.
I don't think I got it.
Are we ready for the vote?
This is the table.
Oh, we're tabling it?
No, it's a
That's
m-
the,
We have a motion
That's the
to
motion.
table.
That's a motion.
Right. So are we ready for the motion to table? Any further discussion or questions? All in favor of the motion to table, raise your hand. 3 opposed. 3,
So it doesn't pass.
so it doesn't pass.
So it's pretty- yeah.
I'll move that we go ahead and award the equity audit to the National Center for Urban School Transformation and authorize the superintendent to execute the contract.
Second.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your motion?
Sure. I propose that the board award the equity audit to the National Center for Urban School Transformation and authorize the superintendent to execute the contract.
Second.
Question or discussion? No? All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. I'm gonna go with them. 4 to 2.
we didn't get to vote.
4 to 2.
We didn't get to vote.
Opposed?
I'm abstaining. I'm in favor of the contract, just not
You're
right
in
now.
favor of the contract?
But not right
So,
now.
Can we do the motion, the vote again? All in favor of the motion,
Mhm.
raise your hand.
I said I'm abstaining.
Oh, you're abstaining, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Okay, so it stands 4, 1 opposed, and 1 abstain. You're writing this down, Mr. Arredondo?
Yes.
Thank you. Consider approval of Terracon for MEP commissioning of Dezavala Elementary and Miller Middle School.
I move that we approve.
Second.
Discussion or questions?
Do we know
In
the,
favor of the motion, raise your hand.
I do have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What's the cost of the commissioning? I just have missed that.
So, when the district goes out for an architect or engineer, we cannot ask for price the first time. We do a request for qualifications, and based on their qualifications, we select the best one, and then we'll sit down and negotiate price.
So then that'll be brought back to us at the next meeting?
It's probably not gonna be over $50,000. It'll be
Okay.
within the superintendent's buying authority, so he'll be able to make that decision. We've gone through the RFQ, so we've met the procurement requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor of the motion? 3,
Sorry, that was in favor.
6. You were writing, okay. 0 opposed. G, consider approval of temporary easement request at Dezavala Elementary School by CenterPoint Energy.
I move that we approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Villalpando. Questions or discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 3, 4, 5, 6, 0 opposed. Consider approval of early resignation retirement incentive.
Before Dr. Baez starts speaking, I just want to say that you win the award for Best Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
So, hello, I'm Marcy Baez. This is,
Did you want
this is our early incentive, our annual early incentive. We're asking, the administration is recommend the process to provide for those, an incentive for those that are letting us know early that they are planning resigning or retiring at the end of their work calendar. And this is what we've done for the last 5 years. It helps with staffing, it helps with a lot of planning and budgeting.
What's the date they have to let you know by?
So it'll be a month. If approved, they'll have 30 days to do that. The form is ready to go, and there are requirements. They have to be with the district for 5 years. Similar to requirements, the action item is, I believe, on the last page in your board book.
I move that we approve.
I have a question also.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Hanson, a second from Ms. Villapando, and now we have a question from Ms. Halsey.
Yeah, so I understand that that it would go for the next 30 days, but it would not be retroactive to the last 30 days, would it?
No, if approved, it's moving forward, and all of the requirements are clearly defined in the actual form.
Thank you.
What was the amount we're having?
So it's 4% of a person's salary, minimum of 1,000, not to exceed 3,000, which is what we've done for the last few years.
Not to exceed 3,000
Per employee.
per employee. Are we ready to vote? Further
Is there a
questions?
financial benefit to getting this to getting this information early? I'm just trying to understand that there is an expense associated with this. I'm trying to understand, is there a commensurate benefit to us financially to understand this?
So it allows us to plan effectively in filling positions, and so, yes,
Okay.
that
We also
that
can
time
bring it
is.
in sooner. For
Pardon?
training,
Mhm.
we can get them into summer training sooner.
Could you tell us approximately how many people took advantage of this last year?
So 13 people took advantage of it this last year. That was a total of 29,000 that was spent on that. The year before that, it was 18, and it was closer to 55. Those are roundabout
But isn't
numbers.
a large number?
55,726. I have the number right here.
And you do have a lot of vacancies right now, don't you?
Yes, ma'am.
I think we talked about that at the end, after the meeting last time. You have a lot of vacancies to fill,
Yes,
and the sooner you know how many vacancies you have to fill, the better.
Right.
President
And we can
Cantu,
start.
just
Yes.
for the sake of my colleague, one of my understandings in the past has been that not only for planning, but for the fact that if we know somebody is going to retire from their position, then we might have a better pick of the applicant pool, for lack of a better term, because we can make the offers before other districts who
Correct.
don't have that information as early.
Absolutely.
That's, understand?
It's good
Correct.
planning, it's a good planning tool. Ready for the vote? All in favor? Raise your hand. 6, 0 opposed. Okay. Discussion and possible action to have a public hearing to discuss the donation of Bonham campus to the Centro Cultural Hispano, and to direct staff to publish a notice of said hearing in the newspaper announcing the location, date, and time of hearing as determined by the Board of Trustees in compliance with Texas Education Code, Section 11.1541, and matters incident thereto. And if the board will remember, we've also received some information from Juan Cruz talking to us about our memorandum of understanding that we have currently in place. Who's going to address this with us?
I'd like to mention that there was also a correction on this particular wording, and it's the old
Yeah.
Bonham.
The old Bonham campus, right.
For not
Yeah,
giving
not
the
the
Just
new-
make
current.
sure that
Yes.
it gets on the record.
On the record, it's
We
the
don't want
old
everybody
Bonham
to think
campus
that- Yeah.
that we're talking
I
about.
thought it was
Thank you
like
for
Bonham.
catching it. Thank you for catching it, Kathy.
Some people might really get excited about.
Oh, yeah, they would,
donating
wouldn't
Bonham.
they?
The next meeting?
Now, what is it?
Dr. Cardona, do you want to address Juan Cruz's comments through his email that he sent to everybody?
Yeah, so basically, we would have to, I think the motion was to donate, but we would have to notify open enrollment charter schools. It's the like, we'd have to notify open enrollment, that the board ultimately has authority to deny any requests if somebody that wanted to come offer it. We also have to look at the tri-party agreement and the MOU that we had established earlier. And then to donate the property, one of the steps will require SMCISD to amend the tri-party, which I just said, and terminate the MOU. And then that will come later on if the district moves forward with the donation.
Ms. Cantu?
Did you say that the MOU had not been signed by the city? That it was just right now really Central and school district? We spoke
There's
before the meeting?
several things, and there is one that the city has not signed off on. The tri-party agreement has been signed off by all three. There's one document
That it's not.
that the lawyers for the district informed me that the city had not signed off on. Central has, and we have, so we have to follow up on that.
Also, we're still pending appraisals on property. Where are we on the appraisals? Who can talk to us about that?
Appraisals will be ready for the 28 meeting in 2 weeks. That's the plan for those appraisals to be ready. And what we've done with the old central office is we've got, we've done a survey, and we have 8 lots there. 2 of those lots, 1 and 8, which is where the existing building sits, and then lot 2 is the parking lot. And I've asked the appraiser to take those out in the mix, at least lots 1 and 8, and give us an appraisal on what's left, and then also take out lot 2, which is the parking lot, if that's part of what we want to provide till Central. Yes, ma'am.
So
Ms. Hanson?
We're not also going to have an appraisal of the whole property?
Yeah, we'll have an appraisal of the entire property as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Good, because I would like to see it
With the building, yes.
separate and then also the
together.
whole property. Thank you.
Ms. Cantu?
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you so much, Ms. Cantu. Yes, and for the members in the audience and the public, I received 2 email communications from our district's legal counsel. The first one provides the language for a motion for us to authorize the superintendent to move forward with the donation of the premises currently leased to Centro and take all legally required and necessary action regarding the same, including notifying the requisite open enrollment charter schools to make an offer to purchase the leased premises and bring any such offer for the board's consideration before holding a public hearing on the board's consideration to donate the leased premises. So this is a little bit different from what I had anticipated, because it was my understanding that we would have the public hearing, we would have the conversation about the public hearing, set the public hearing, and start this process in motion. However, I'm still comfortable as the requesting trustee to move forward with an action to do all of the things I just stated and to give the superintendent authority to take those actions. I understand that there are some situations that could be considered like outliers of this arrangement, all relating to the tri-party agreement that was voted on and approved by the board several months ago. However, it was my understanding that the reason why that tri-party agreement had to exist in the first place was because the ISD owns the property, owns the facility, Centro leases it, and this money was coming from City of San Marcos CBDG dollars. So I understand, like, on the front end, it seems kind of, I don't know, contrarian to say, you know, we're going to vote to terminate this MOU or terminate the lease with Centro, et cetera, but we would be doing those things if the building ended up being Centro's, right? So it's not kicking Centro out, or it's not, you know, impacting the CBDG grant money if the board takes action to donate the building, right? Because they'd be the owner of it at that point in time. So I appreciate the follow-up regarding the MOU and the tri-party agreements, but the tri-party agreement exists because Centro at this time does not own the property. But if we were to donate it to them, then I think all of the tri-party agreement stuff becomes a moot point because they own the building, and then they can work with the City of San Marcos how they want. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we authorize the superintendent to move forward with the donating of the premises currently leased to Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos and take all legally required and necessary action regarding the same, including notifying the requisite open enrollment charter schools to make an offer to purchase the leased premises and bring any such offer for the board's consideration before holding a public hearing on the board's consideration to donate the leased premises.
I'll second. And Ms. Cantu, I have a.
Ms. Cantu, I have a,
Ms. Halsey.
Halsey's a second.
Ms. Villalpando can go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I just want to say in layman's terms, my understanding is, so this vote, if it carries, it would set in process a longer process where there are legal ramifications that we would have to go through. We'd have to do a pretty exhaustive offer consideration. We'd have to find out and work with Centro to find out if they're actually ready, willing, and able to take over the property. It wouldn't necessarily have to be the entire block. It could just be the building of Centro. So there'd be a lot of negotiation. We would need to hold public hearings to ensure that the community has a chance to weigh in on this proposal. So tonight's action is just really, if we move forward with this, it's just really starting sort of a process of inquiry. I think is fair to say that we would then work with the lawyers and with Centro and with the community and the city and everybody to see if this is what the will of the board, the district, the benefit of Centro, and the community is. So.
And just as a follow-up, Ms. Halsey, so the motion provided by Mr. Cruz specifically states the premises, so it would just be Centro and the property that it sits on, so it would not be the rest of the block.
Thanks
So
for that.
I understand that there was some questions about appraisal of the block and the property adjacent to. This would just set in motion consideration of donating the old Bonham campus and the physical land that building sits on.
Thanks
not
for the
re-
clarification.
Yeah, just so,
But
and
when
so
we
people in
take-
the audience and everybody know, this would just direct staff to move forward with the subdivided block
Process.
donation process.
Ms. Villalpando?
Yes, thank you. I just want to notify the board that I am abstaining from this agenda item because as one of the founding members of Centro and former board member, I feel that I have two conflicting loyalties to this district and Centro. As such, I believe it is in both entities' best interest that I abstain from this particular item. Okay?
Ms. Hanson, you have a comment?
In this motion, does that include the building, the property, and also the parking lot? That's a question I have.
I understood just the building and the physical land it sits on currently.
So not the
Plots
parking lot?
1 and 8.
Premises, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
plots 1 and 8.
I also think it's important that we wait to get the appraisal. And I won't vote because I don't consider us in the budgetarily ready to give away an asset, especially when we're going into the budget process over 6 million in the red, and we haven't done anything else to the budget process. So I don't see how we can approve even starting the process. I think we're getting people's hopes up without full information being provided to everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Just to follow up with Trustee Hanson's comment, I guess individually, the way that I'm processing this dialogue and conversation, having been on the board throughout numerous conversations about Centro, we've had some pretty energized board meetings where there have been perceptions of selling the block, where community members have come and expressed their concern about not selling it, et cetera, and time again, this board has at least publicly said, no, we've never considered selling Centro, we would never sell Centro, we would never kick the organization out, and I believe that to be wholeheartedly true. I think everyone's statements on the issue, I will take at face value. Independently, an appraisal for the block does not change my opinion on whether or not I would ever vote to sell the building currently occupied by Central. So for me, an appraised value, having that data is not gonna move me one way or the other. Like if I find out tomorrow that Central is worth $10 million, that is not gonna change my perception that I would wanna sell that to somebody other than Central or donate it to other than Central. So I guess individually, I understand and I appreciate your comment, but evaluation on that building does not change my perspective on what we should do with it, so.
Dr. Sami?
Has the school board ever received a request to donate the building to El Centro?
Hear you, what?
Has the school board ever received a request to donate the school board, the building to El Centro?
Dr. Cardona?
I was not here in 2010, but I do believe that Ms. Ophelia did put a letter into the board asking for it to be donated when it was originally started, but I could be wrong. It's on letterhead, I've seen the letter.
Do we know if they have the means to own the building, to provide all of the necessary insurance and things like that?
Gloria's here. Gloria, a member from Central. She'll tell us. Hate to put you on the spot, Gloria.
Got a written statement.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that right now, the question of whether we could or could not do that. So I think that right now, we are taking care of everything that we can. We pay the lease to the school and the rest of the utilities and, excuse me, and all our costs that we have managed to cover.
Okay, thank you.
I feel that every time the topic of having anything to do with that Centro, it brings the community out. I don't think there's anyone here that is opposed to Centro Cultural. I think that we all are very supportive of its role in our community. And I would love for that issue to be resolved. I mean, they don't have the funds to pay us for the property. I know I've heard big numbers when they talk about the value of the property. I think I've heard up to $3 million or something to that effect. So I know that it's a difficult topic every time it comes up. I mean, all of y'all have seen the response to the community every time it comes up. But if we could start a process where we could look at perhaps donating it, I am in favor of that. But I'm still concerned, like Ms. Hanson said, that we're beginning a budget process with a deficit. On one hand, we're the guardians of the taxpayers' money, and on the other hand, we want to cooperate with our community as much as we can, because y'all do provide good services there, and people have really enjoyed the availability of that center. But we have to weigh, even if it's valued at $3 million, that is a big amount to give away.
Ms. Cantu?
Yes.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. The argument or the concern that we're going into difficult budgetary, waters, if you will, it's gonna impact us donating the building, because then if we exercise that thought process and walk that out, then it's saying we're ready and willing and able to sell Central to fill budgetary issues on the ISD side, right? Like if we're saying, no, I don't want to do this because I don't know about what the budget's going to look like in the future, then it's saying that selling that building is on the table. Or at least that's my impression, right? Because otherwise, what is the concern about donating it if we're afraid of its impact on the budget?
I'm not concerned about donating. I think that it's a big service to our community to have it and maintain it open. And I know that they don't have that kind of money. Now, I've had phone calls on, the county commissioners were looking at something. I've had a couple of phone calls asking if maybe the county and the city and some other entity could buy it and preserve it for the community as a community property. I've had a couple of phone calls on that, but there was nothing firm and nothing sure. It was just in a discussion.
I think monetarily, Gloria, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the rent, right, and then there's up to $6,750. But I think that was the purpose of them, Central, getting the CDBG grant, was to take over some of that process. And to my knowledge, I think we take care of the landscaping out there and in front. So if it were donated, I don't think we're donating the property. I'm not a lawyer, but I think there's gonna be stipulations around what Central can and can't do. It has to remain a nonprofit. Gloria can't say, hey, IDEA, come in, I wanna put a charter school here, because then it reverts back to the school district. But I think maybe she would wanna know, or Central people would wanna know, what are all those things if we do donate that blocks
What
or
restrictions
parcels
would
1 and
be?
8. But for the most part, other than the $6,750 and the once a month cutting of the grass, they're pretty self-sufficient. They pay their bills, that they could turn around and not be paying us rent, and they could use that for landscaping and stuff like that, so. Programming and other
And
things.
the grant, does the grant have any restrictions on them?
Are you talking about the city grant? Which grant?
The grant that
The
we-
CDBG one?
Yeah.
So that grant is for specific renovations. So we had asked for renovations of the windows, of the doors, and this is all really items to be more efficient. The AC, redo the AC units. And to enclose the east side and the back where it's open, so that when the children go to rooms 1 and 2 and 3, that they're not in an open area, just as the school district did what we call our West Wing on the LBJ side, that when the portable was moved, the school came back and rebuilt that wall. And so we have the assurance that the kids are not going to be roaming up and down in an open hallway. And so because when school fuel moved out and we were able to receive that space, so that space now holds our library and computer lab. And so as we have programming there, the children need to come into the main building to use the restroom. And so we wanted to enclose that area also, so the children are free to come back and forth, and we don't have that concern about leaving them out in the open between the doors. And I just wanted to say one more thing. We mow our own grass now.
There you go.
Ms.
The
Hanson?
$6,750 you talked about, that's for maintenance of the building or repairs, or what exactly? And is that yearly, monthly?
The district covers up to $6,750, or they used to at one point.
I'm not sure that there's exactly a set amount. I don't think that we have ever been charged for any of the work orders that we have sent in to do.
I think we,
So is that yearly, monthly? What is the,
it's yearly, $6,750. It was in the original 5-year grant when I
I
got
thought
here.
it was 10,000, but.
No, it was lowered to a percentage of
It's
the.
identical to the yearly lease,
yearly
so
lease.
it's like,
It's 60
it's a wash, right?
Yeah.
The lease is paid out, and then we pay in maintenance, right? So it's zeroed out right now every year, theoretically, contractually it could be. So this would not change like a revenue stream or anything. It would just be that Central now covers the $6,780 in repairs themselves, which they were paying to the ISD in rent. And again, just to get us back to the motion, because it's getting late, this is the last item, get out of here by 9, that this just starts the process of a possible donation. So Dr. Cardona would still have to reach out to the charter schools, we would get responses, a charter school could offer $100 million for Central, and then we cross that bridge when we get there, et cetera, right? This doesn't bind us to take action, it just starts the process, so.
I would like to instruct our superintendent to also contact our county judge, who has contacted me with concerns about El Centro, so you could talk to them to see what their ideas were as well.
Can I just clarify? When I heard the $3 million figure before, that was for the whole block, not just for the building.
And that's if it's commercial.
Correct. So, that, that, I think that sounds like a very big number, but that doesn't necessarily. It also, my understanding is if we were to proceed with this, it would not preclude the district from selling and/or building on the other portion of the block if we so desired to do that, so.
Correct.
When I had asked you an approximate, I remember you gave me a 3 million, and I thought that was just the Central property. That's the entire.
That's the whole plot. That was a 2019.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's gone up since then. Any other questions or discussion, because we're ready for the vote?
Is the building protected by Historical Society? Okay, thank you.
State of Texas.
Thank you.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Oppose? Abstain? 4-1-1. I'll entertain a motion for
I move
adjournment.
that we adjourn.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Hanson, seconded by Mr. Arredondo, that we adjourn the meeting. All in favor, raise your hand. 6, opposed, 0.
This is when we came back. Yes.
And then you gave me a funny look when I asked about the subpopulation.
I'm not, yeah, I just can't tell.
So we typically don't schedule by